of you to this very special event, Deloitte Nigeria Economic Outlook for the year 2021. I have the singular pleasure and privilege of welcoming all of you to today's event. Wherever you're joining us from Nigeria and Africa and around the world, I am Bosin Omofaye, and on behalf of Deloitte Nigeria, please accept my warm welcome to this very important event. We have a couple of hours to go through this very high-profile event, and we will make this very interesting and very pleasing to everyone, informative as well. But of course, we've got a whole lineup of programs within the next couple of hours. May I quickly run through them briefly for the benefits of everyone. We'll have a warm welcome address from the man who is Fatai Folarin. Fatai Folarin is the CEO Deloitte West Africa and a member of the Deloitte Africa Executive Committee. Is giving us a warm welcome, a formal welcome as it were. And of course, we'll hear from two of our distinguished high-profile guests, the Honorable Minister of Finance for the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Zainab Ahmed, will be speaking to us, delivering a keynote address. We also have today on the program the pleasure of the country director for the International Monetary Fund for Nigeria, Ari Eisen. Thank you very much. We appreciate your making this with us at the very last minute. We appreciate your making the time to be part of this event. And of course, we have two panels, and you don't want to miss any of these two, by the way, again, because the whole high-profile folks who know what we need to do, the direction for the economy, in particular, this very particular tenuous and difficult period, not just for Nigeria, for the whole world. So we appreciate everyone. Please keep your questions and your comments coming. We have the Q&A box, we have the comment box. Please use them on your system. Please remember that we will request all participants to mute their microphones or system, audio system, so that they can, our speakers, so that they can, we will not have much of interfering noise around. We can listen to the speakers and the panelists. Registered participants, remember that we will be sending you all the presentations via the email addresses you used in registering for this particular event. We're now streaming live on YouTube, Deloitte Nigeria. You can join it, and of course the hashtag, you also see that as we move on with the presentation. Without much ado, I have the singular pleasure and honor of welcoming Fatai Folarin, who is the CEO of Deloitte Africa, West Africa, and a member of Deloitte Africa Executive Committee, to give us a formal welcome. Fatai, you have our attention. Fatai?
Hello, Fatai, you're on mute.
I think Fatai is on. I think Fatai is on mute. Is getting that sorted out. But let me just quickly give you a sense of our first panel. By the way, yeah, let me give you a sense of the first panel. The topic is economic outlook for 2021, Global Africa and Nigeria. And of course, we've got about 4 members of this panel, which will have the main speaker, Martin Davis, will lead that for us. I'll be moderated by a member of the Deloitte family. That panel will be for about 40-45 minutes, a few presentations, Q&A as well, and we can all look forward to sharing that. Please make sure that you have your comments and your questions coming through. In the meantime, the second panel will have, of course, another set of panelists who would be speaking to another very important point, and we will have all of this lined up for you today on this by this particular event. We have a few questions also that I will be taking from here as the moderator of this particular event, Deloitte Nigeria Economic Outlook for 2021. Fatai Folarin, you are we're getting ready for your welcome, a formal welcome address, and after that we'll be I will have the pleasure of inviting the Honorable Minister of Finance to give her welcome address, a keynote address, I beg your pardon. But Fatai, you can hear me?
Can you hear me, Bosi?
Yes, please go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, very well, loud and clear.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget, National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, distinguished panelists, guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Deloitte Nigeria Economic Outlook 2021. This is the 5th edition of this program that we're having. Last year, if you recall, we all met and had this meeting physically. But for this year, due to the global global pandemic, we are forced to have this session with you virtually. This is a reality of our time, and that's what we have confronted with. But the benefit of this is that we could have more outreach with you and link up with everybody at this time, particularly when we look at the global economic reality and look at the effect of the pandemic on everyone. Everybody had to adjust to the reality of the health challenge, the catastrophe that comes with the pandemic, and how it has affected business, government, and the public at large. There have been a lot of pressure everywhere in the world, and also in Nigeria, as we are not isolated from the reality of the world. Today, our attempt is to look at what has happened to Nigerian economy by looking at Nigeria from the Africa perspective, looking at us as a nation that is also operating within the global economy. What our attempt today is to reflect on what has happened and how can we contribute effectively in the development of our nation, and how can Deloitte as a firm contribute to the socio-economic development of the society by bringing the entire group of people attending this session today. So we appreciate you for being part of this session, and we thank you so much for coming together with us. The major challenge that is confronting every economy in the world is to adjust to the reality of the global pandemic, to develop a resilient environment and economy that will be able to take care of the people of the country, particularly the downtrodden, the people that have been greatly affected by the effect of the global economy and the pandemic, and to also rise up to the challenge of the modern reality. Technology has made things very easy for us at this moment, and every business has also adjusted effectively within a short period. In fact, when we expect that we should be taking so long a time to adjust to the new technology requirements, you see businesses now coming up with so many innovations and approach in terms of how they deal with the economy and how they take the business forward, particularly because there's a need for everyone to continue to survive and sustain. So there's a resilient posture in the society as we have it today, and everybody is rising to these challenges. The credit to the society is how businesses in Nigeria and particularly globally has adjusted. Everybody has adjusted to the reality of making sure that innovation is the driver of every arrangement and everything that businesses are doing. And to us, we're quite delighted that this is happening. It's also a fact that the way the federal government of Nigeria came up with the budget for 2021, the budget 2021 actually was quite innovative and aggressive. Because when you look at the total budget expenditure of 13.59 trillion and compare with revenue expectation of 7.8 trillion, there's a deficit that we also see of 5.7 million. This deficit is what is one of the major challenge that the minister will also be addressing at this session today, particularly looking at how Nigeria is adjusting to make sure that we continue to harness revenue into the economy and we continue to create an enabling environment for the society and Nigeria at large. But one key driver that has been very innovative in this year's budget is the decision of the federal government to also enact the Finance Act, which we all agree is quite innovative this year, because it gives us the direction of how Nigeria is also looking at the economy and how we're trying to develop to make sure that we make the economy much easier for people to operate, create an enable environment for businesses to thrive and also for economy to grow as exponentially. Today, what we have seen is the general interest of people in the way the Finance Act has been accepted and the way the federal government has also popularized this in the society. We at Deloitte has also been identifying with government in this area, and we have been doing everything possible to make sure that we contribute effectively in the society at large. Today, our intention is to actually focus on some major areas that can help us to lift the general discourse in Nigeria in terms of the economic growth, which is the main theme of this activity. Particularly if you look at us, the minister will be telling us about the journey of Nigeria economic recovery plan for 2021. We're also going to be looking at the economic outlook for 2021 for the global and Africa environment and Nigeria in particular. Because of the reality of the society in which we are today, we have also put technology and digital infrastructure as part of the discussions that we'll be having today, basically to try and evaluate how can society, how can Nigeria as a nation adjust and businesses effectively adjust to the reality of the economic society. So we have the panelists with us today that will be discussing this, and we're quite delighted that these are people that have had tremendous experience in business world in order to contribute to the discourse today. For us at Deloitte, we are quite happy that you're part of this session today. We're also continuing to develop our activities and relationship with the federal government, and we believe in the society, the level of resilience that is in the economy, and how Nigeria can continue to grow as a nation. I would like to urge everyone to please continue to be with us for the rest 3 to 4 hours and join us in this discourse. Thank you very much for being part of this. Thank you very much. Bosin, back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Fatai Folarin, Deloitte West Africa CEO and a member of the Deloitte Africa's Executive Committee. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Very warm welcome to everyone. And of course, right now we move on straight ahead, of course, to introduce our special guest of honor for this Nigeria Economic Outlook Deloitte 2021 event, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed. We are happy to have you on the program this morning, and we appreciate your time. On behalf of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, thank you very much. And on behalf of Deloitte Nigeria, I have the pleasure of inviting you, Honorable Minister, to please make your presentation. Thank you. The Honorable Finance, Budget and National Planning Man. You have the floor. Okay, I think we can see the minister's presentation, the opening part of that. We're waiting to have the minister in on the right now live on the program to speak to her presentation, which we of course we're sharing the opening part of that with members of the program right now, the participants, and everyone can see that. Let me just quickly, while we're waiting for the Honorable Finance Minister to get ready and make our presentation, the first panel which we're having for this particular conference speaks to building a resilient economy for the future, and that is one major point that is now in focus. How do we build economies resilient, inclusive for a future post-pandemic? And that will be one panel. Oh, let me just give you a sense of our panelists. Yomi Olubero, who is the West Africa tax leader at Deloitte Nigeria, will be speaking on this panel, as well as the Olusheye Arowolo of West Africa International Tax and Regulatory at Deloitte as well. Walter Kazidi Mulumbo, country representative for the World Health Organization, will bring in this very important perspective to the panel as well. But let's kick this off very quickly now. We're waiting for the Honorable Minister of Finance. Let me invite Dr. Martin Davis, who's the Managing Director, Emerging Markets and Africa at Deloitte, to give us very quickly his presentation, part 2. Then, of course, we will take it straight from there when we have the Honorable Finance Minister, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, in the room. Thank you very much. Martin Davis, you have the floor. Thank you. Martin?
Yeah, hi, good morning. Apologies, we're 45 minutes ahead. Just give me 2 seconds to bring in my presentation. Just bear with me for 30 seconds, please.
Okay, but Dr. Martin Davis, the Managing Director, Emerging Markets and Africa at Deloitte, will be speaking to us for about 20, his presentation will be about 20 minutes. Then we'll be looking forward to the presentation by the Finance Minister. As I said earlier, the first panel, building a resilient economy for the future. The second panel will speak to digital infrastructure and the changing nature of business landscape. Of course, we all know what the pandemic has wrought on the global economy, but again, all of this will be shared within the time of the conference, the Deloitte Night.
Hi, yes. Am I ready to start? I have my presentation up and you give me the green light, please.
Please, you have the floor. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining this morning, and thank you very much for your available time. I fully appreciate it. I've been asked to give some thoughts in alignment with the Minister's presentation, just some general thoughts on, as the Chair was kindly saying, about building a resilient future. And this is something, my concern is that we've been talking a lot in recent years about deglobalization caused by arguably fragmentation of global supply chains, a very hawkish foreign commercial policy coming out of the US, one which is certainly not engaged with, not fully engaging with multilateralism. However, I think in Africa's case, it's not so much a case of deglobalization that we fear post-COVID-19. The more accurate word, I think, is marginalization. We're seeing that the stimulus of first world economies, think by the US Fed, think Bank of Japan, think Bank of England, ECB, etc. And certainly we in Africa certainly lack the fiscal headspace to stimulate our economies in ways that first world economies certainly have a luxury of doing so. I'd like to share some thoughts perhaps on how I see the global economy firstly, some thoughts, and bring it closer to Africa, more specifically, what does this really mean for Nigeria, as you say, Chair, trying in the interest of building a so-called resilient future for ourselves. Now, I put this slide together about a week and a half ago, and if we even think back to, dare I say, November, none of us could have predicted how virulent and impactful in a very negative way this second wave of COVID has been. I'm talking from South Africa currently, and you would have all read the stories of the so-called South African variant that's maybe mislabeled or exaggerated perhaps, but certainly the impact has been dramatic. Is this the second wave, or arguably is it just the first wave that never really went away? And if we go back, I think, to Q2 last year, we were all debating about the shape of a recovery and what letter of the alphabet will the recovery or the economic trajectory mimic. There was initially the V shape, and if you're in equities, clearly the disconnect between, as Americans would say, Wall Street, the main economy, so the equities markets, and Main Street, the real economy, clearly S&P 500 has become a safe haven, if you will, and that's the V-shaped recovery in the markets. The second shape was that of U-shape, and if you're living in Asia these days, largely a Sino-centric Asia in terms of growth, the recovery, the global recovery has certainly been Asia-powered, and the U-shape particularly refers to Asian economies, I would argue. The W shape is what you see here is constant aftershocks, if you will, and amplification of the waves, resulting in negative economic impacts. And this is what we're seeing now, and we've seen it particularly in Western Europe and also in our part of the world in recent months. And I've always said it's almost impossible to predict economics unless one is able to understand the behavior of a virus, and clearly we don't. So the W shape is where we currently are, but the other shape was L, and this is maybe relevant to, I think, to the two biggest economies in our continent, the two bookends, if you will, Sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria and South Africa, where countries we entered 2020 in a period of weakness, of arguably of significant structural reforms being required. And this L shape talks to a lack of recovery because of their inability to, quote, structurally reform. And the notion of structural reform, we hear this phrase very often, particularly around budget, speech, presentation time. We have it in South Africa in 2 weeks' time. Is what does it mean? Well, each country has its own unique set of required structural reforms, and more on that shortly, perhaps. So in Africa's case, you know, we are, and I think this is particularly the case, even more so in West Africa than Central, Eastern, and Southern, is we are always price takers on commodities, and arguably because of the extreme dependence on the extractive sector, we are unable, arguably, to determine our own fate in many cases. And this is what I think we mean about building a resilient future. What can we proactively do as sovereign governments to drive the growth agenda, rather than merely relying on the highly fluctuating commodity prices? And one such proactive initiative, certainly currently, is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, something which holds much potential, but arguably is the greatest, probably the most ambitious free trade project since the WTO was actually formed. But it's particularly up to individual governments to drive this agenda going forward. So I'm fortunate to be part of the global Deloitte's economists team. We have 1 or 2 of us per region. There's about 10 of us in this economist group. And we've been working in recent weeks on a set of scenarios. These scenarios are very generic, intentionally so, and they are meant to, at the very least, provoke some thinking. I'm not going to go into the micro detail of every one, but again, this could apply to any country to varying degrees, and it's not for me to say, but it's for all of us, I think, to decide as to where we think the scenario, the outlook, short, medium term, will be for Nigeria going forward. So to begin with, is we have these 4 scenarios. The most positive being the new dawn, and this clearly the exit strategy, if you will, from COVID is vaccinations. No one is talking about a naturalized so-called herd immunity in recent times. The exit strategy is through effective rollout and widespread vaccinations in one's country. And of course, the Swedish model or the Swedish approach, something what was incredibly popular and much debated in 2020, is now no more. The Swedish model is no longer an option, clearly. So countries that are able to effectively roll out vaccinations with some fiscal measures and smart spending by the state, and also protection of private sector activity and jobs, i.e. protecting GDP, are certainly in the new dawn category. Countries currently led by the likes of Israel, the UAE, and arguably many Asian countries as well. Sun showers, some hiccups perhaps, but nevertheless, generally wide vaccinations through the course of 2021, and countries that are starting to sort of progress quite rapidly, and certainly the light is very clear at the end of the tunnel. Again, as mentioned, a lot of this is dependent on, as I said, government response. How does government respond to this crisis? And you can see on the left-hand side, vaccine, not just distribution, but acceptance in many cases. Hard rain, I'll talk about shortly, and an endless winter, which I'm quite concerned about in many cases, talking to countries with pre-existing structural weaknesses. So the new dawn, I have put in the blocks, the circles, the growth forecasts, best case scenario. We have not put Asia in here because of the strong, very strong growth trajectory of Asia already. China will grow. China's the only major economy, that grew in 2020. That's just over 2%. And China will this year, I'll stick my neck out, will probably go 7.5%, maybe 8% growth in 2021. And of course, that's a very positive story. So the Africa figures have been taken from a number of forecasts from very reputable agencies, but despite that, they are very varying. That 3.6% figure was Standard Chartered Bank, which forecast. That's probably the most optimistic outlook I've heard of the continent in 2021. Secondly, the sun showers. I'm not going to read this all to you. I will make the slides available for distribution afterwards. I'll send it immediately after this presentation, and then Deloitte Nigeria will be able to circulate to all participants. On the Africa side, 3.2%, that's for IMF's forecast. IMF is always somewhat optimistic, maybe overly so in certain cases, but again, trying to group a very heterogeneous region with very different dynamics into a single growth forecast is challenging, to say the least. On the hard rain, we're looking at 2.7%, and this is actually the Economist presentation, which was made in December, in fact. So that is this is the hard rain forecast. Apologies about my phone, and something which we will be looking again. How will African states either unilaterally or multilaterally manage these vaccination programs through 2021? And the worst case scenario, I'm afraid, and this 1.6% figure was a figure put out. Actually, sorry, this is the Economist figure. The previous one was the World Bank in about 3 weeks ago, and there was an Economist article this last week, which was relatively or very negative, I'm afraid, talking about the marginalization of Africa because of the inability to roll out mass vaccinations, and this talks a very bleak short to medium term future across the continent, not just ourselves, of course, but also particularly the United States and to an extent the European Union. So these are the 4 scenarios we see, and a lot of this depends on, these are very generic as mentioned, but how do countries start to better plan for the future and avoid the negative scenarios here is the point. So what we're seeing, I put this slide in, you can just see the contractions from Q1, Q2 last year. And we've seen the bounce back, the recovery, but what the Economist magazine called the 90% economy. In the developing world case, we're seeing the 80% economy, where because in the absence of fiscal stimulus and protection of GDP, we are not getting back anywhere near the stalled recovery, anywhere near to the good old days of 2019, if you will. So the sort of forecast, this 10-20% gap, if you will, between what we were prior crisis and where we need to get back to, just to get back to where we were, the starting point arguably of 2019. And I talked about this marginalization effect. If we are unable to get vaccinations rolled out, I think that the dramatic impact on travel, for commercial travel, tourism receipts as a result of that, the cutting off of services to many parts of our economies, and just general lack of sort of human capital talent movements across the region, and this will have dramatic impact on labor markets, particularly going forward. Not to mention remittances, which is already happening because of the lack of flows of human capital between our respective countries and regions. Again, I refer to this Economist slide, and this is something which was published last week, in fact, and I thought it was very good to provoke some discussion. And talking about the marginalization, of course, vaccinations is not a single country play, considering often many of our poorest borders. This needs to be, I wouldn't say a continent-wide approach, but certainly regional economic communities need to stand up and to better intervene and help manage these vaccination rollouts. Porous borders mean that no country is an island here when it comes to vaccinations. And this talks about this marginalization. What I'm seeing here is is relatively strong recovery in Asia. Again, a China-centric driven Asia, the United States and European Union, and almost a consolidation of capital around the sort of global north, and a marginalization of the global south. Think Latin America, think ourselves in this part of the world, and to a lesser extent in certain countries in Southeast Asia as well. A marginalization of the global south is what we ultimately need to stave off here and avoid. I'm going to fly through some of this. So this is the forecast we did, and again, this is a bit of a a bit of a shot in the dark, because predicting the oil price is a bit of a mug's game, and there's no commodity that is as affected by geopolitics and speculative interests as oil is. In our case, in South Africa, in Southern Africa, the bulk of our exports, 2/3 in our case, is oil. Is solid commodities. So the pricing of those is far much more predictable, considering the ultimate customer is China. As I said, China's strong growth rate underpins commodity prices going forward. But this forecast we're seeing is at least a 5-year play until we get back to 2019. But there is a rider to this, and I'll show you now, possibly. I'm going to fly through a few of these slides, if I may. So in 2020, of course, there are only 11 countries in our part of the world in Africa that show positive growth. Others, and towards the far left, we've seen significant contractions. And Mauritius at the extreme, it just talks to the dependence on receipts from tourism and services flows. And even South Africa and Botswana, which have been dramatically, in Zimbabwe, in the Southern Africa region. This is, again, more applicable. It's interesting, but it's more applicable to solid commodity-driven economies, where you have arguably this coupling effect, and its correlation and causation, whereby the growth rate of China, considering the resource-intensive nature of China's growth model, has underpinned the growth of all commodity exporting economies over the course of the last generation or so. This is not just an Africa phenomenon. This is a Australia phenomenon. It's many countries in the west coast of Latin America as well. So, and you see this strong growth in China provides one of the very few external tailwinds for the strong growth in Central and Southern Africa going forward on the commodities front. We should be of course, China's rebalancing, but away from investment-driven to consumer-driven. But this gross fixed capital formation spend in China, extremely resource-intensive, underpins growth of commodity exporting economies. Just one last point to mention is China, relatively speaking, has been very timid on stimulus post or during the COVID period over the course of the last year. Nowhere near the bazooka stimulus it put in place, think Western financial crisis, September 2008. But a very important point to note, because of China's strong growth rate over the course of the last 12 years or so, post-2008, China's economy is now double the size today than what it was roughly in 2008. It's less about the speed of China's growth as it is about the size of the economy. It's about size rather than speed, such is the strength of this demand coming out of China for commodity exporting economies. On Nigeria's front, you all know this. The extreme dependence on one commodity is extremely unhealthy from an economic perspective and a sustainability perspective. And again, being a total price taker on a single commodity is high risk, of course. And I think this is the ultimate question of Nigeria. How does an oil-propelled economy diversify, considering the vested interests at times need to be countered, the sort of whole direction of the economy focused on a single commodity? That is something which is the ultimate long-term challenge of Nigeria. Now, here's my what-if scenario, and I'm hoping that I hope this has been. I thought of this last week, and this is the first time I put this slide up. I looked at an oil price trajectory, and if you recall, I was in Nigeria we had the World Economic Forum Summit in Abuja. Fatai, I think we were together, and the oil price, it was 2014, and it was May, I remember, and the oil price was about 125 bucks a barrel. And Goldman Sachs was projecting $200 oil. Nigeria's growth rate was 7.5%, 8%. In April that year, the Central Bank of Nigeria had just rebased its GDP, and Nigeria was declared the single largest economy in GDP terms, nominal GDP, in Africa. Happy days. It was May 2014. Shortly afterwards, by July 2014, the oil price started its dramatic slide south. Why did this happen? There's a multitude of reasons. But what if you go look at this slide from January 2009, when the US Fed started QE, quantitative easing, and exactly what is happening now in the US Fed, and looking at Biden, another 1.9 trillion US dollars, supposedly thereabouts, soon to come through the system again. The oil price going back from 2009 to 2011 increased a dramatic approximately 160% in 2 years because of QE. This was not, I would argue, a market. Of course, there was a bounce, but it was not a market-driven price. It was a speculation-driven price. Speculation oil price underpinned Nigeria's growth rate. Now, question is, what if this happens again? Is there a real plausible scenario where literally starting now, we've seen oil uptick to 60. Is there a real plausible scenario because of QE in the United States particularly, and this other $1.9 trillion, so much money sloshing around the system, yields in first world economies are zero or negative. Money, capital chases return. This could result in significant speculation on oil price, an inflationary impact on oil, underpinning a very strong, robust growth rate in Nigeria. This is incredibly important, I think, of how the short to medium term future of your economy, not just Nigeria, but Angola pretty much, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Nigeria, etc., will play out in the coming 2 years or so. There's very recent history indicates that this is a real possibility. I don't know if it will, but just putting it out there. So to conclude, if I may, Chair, diversification, developmental success. I spent some time with my friend Ricardo Hausman in the US at Harvard for a while, and he talks about this often, and I'm quite a convert to his thinking. And he talks about, how countries diversify. And I put two slides together. One, manufacturing is vital for inequality. Now, inequality, of course, is a burning issue of our time. I took some random countries I just thought of, literally, there's no science to this, on the left-hand side. And the right-hand side, I looked at countries where I thought would have high levels of manufacturing value add. I looked at countries with high inequality or low equality, same thing. And there's a direct correlation between high manufacturing and low levels of inequality. Why? Because there's no sector like manufacturing that creates structural employment, i.e. 12 checks a year for employees, maybe 13 if you're lucky. It embeds IP, it results in services sector, and it just sort of creates true sustainable development as a high MVA manufacturing value add. The global average of manufacturing value add currently is about 18%. Anything above 18% and you're outperforming. Anything below 18% and you're underperforming in terms of MVA to GDP. And Gini coefficient, of course, high Gini, not happy countries. So I put the same data, different representation, and clearly you can see Nigeria here. Manufacturing value add, high MVA equals happy countries, i.e. low Gini coefficients. And this is a societal, I digress slightly, less economic, more of a societal issue. But to conclude, I want to show you these slides, and I'm not going to talk to them, I just show a picture. China, my former home, 1962, China was your stereotypical poor commodity-driven economy. This is, and you can't measure competitiveness by GDP. You measure it by exports, because exports can be tracked constantly on a monthly basis, even daily, and it shows your true competitive advantage, i.e. you have something that someone else wants to buy. That's competitive advantage. So this is China 62, not much is going on. China today, significant diversification, a manufacturing success story. And this is why China's exports, no matter what the global macro situation is, remains very robust. Why? Is because the economy is able to shift to align itself or cater for the shifting vagaries of demand in the global economy. Another country, Vietnam, 62, rubber, latex gums, a going nowhere country. Today, 2018 figures, massively diversified, almost a new Chinese province, if you will. We're looking at Angola, 62. Look at Angola, 2018. Again, the Dutch disease of single commodity, US dollar priced, your economy becomes dollarized effectively, thus your monetary policy is largely ineffective when it comes to export competitiveness. Botswana, 2000. I was talking to my friends about Botswana last week, and they were quite shocked when I put this up, because Botswana today is just over 3/4 of exports are diamonds. I'll just go back, and you can just see the growing dependence on diamond exports, and that's effectively one commodity, but also one company in Botswana. South Korea, I lived in Seoul for a few years, and when I arrived there, not much was really going on, but it was in the early stages of rapid industrial takeoff. But this was South Korea 62, and this is Korea today. And this is what Samsung, LG, Hyundai, Kia, world-class corporations have created from that to this in a generation. Malaysia, I showed Malaysia earlier. Again, sorry, I showed Vietnam, Malaysia, the success of Southeast Asia. And Nigeria, the last slide. So this is Nigeria, 1962. We can just see sort of petroleum was 9%, and very similar to South Korea effectively, and Southeast Asia was back in a similar time. Nigeria today, you're not surprised. It's an extreme dependence on oil and gas economy. And this is the ultimate challenge. How do we start to diversify from this? I know my time is up, but I'll leave you with one slide, and it's this. So I fear we spoke about we called it the Great Recession. It wasn't a global one, but it was a Western interpretation. The Western financial crisis was a banking crisis. It started in London and New York and London, and it became a sovereign crisis for Western countries. And we called it the Great Recession. It didn't apply to Asia, hence it wasn't global. The real prospect for me now is not so much Great Recession, but Great Divergence. This marginalization between, simplistically put, North and South. And countries need to very proactively avoid this great divergence that I speak to. And the final quote is from Michael Porter, a strategy guru, as you know, he founded a company, Monitor, which I'm now proud to say is Monitor Deloitte, and a famous Harvard professor. But ultimately, nations succeed in particular industries because their home environment is the most forward-looking, dynamic, and challenging. And this is what I think what we talk to nowadays, the political economy of countries, government, state, business, need to figure out in this increasingly very complex, hyper-globalized world. And COVID has just merely accelerated this globalization, or accelerated the speed of change events is such that I don't think we can quite comprehend as political economies of how to create the secret source of growth and success and diversification for the future. Chair, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Much appreciated. And look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Martin, I know if this is a conference, we have about 650 participants now, so that means it's a whole hall filled with participants, and you'll be getting roaring applause for this presentation. Thank you so much. You have to recover, you have to thrive. How do you plan moving forward? Yes, you need to do smart spending, and we appreciate it. I think you've set the tone for this particular Deloitte Nigeria Economic Outlook or event. Thank you so much, Martin Davis. The panelists who are coming through for the first set and the second now have a lot to digest and begin to think through for their contributions as well. But I think at this point in time, there's been a time well spent. Now let's spend another time well with Nigeria's Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. On behalf of the Federal Republic and the authority of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we have the pleasure of inviting you to speak to us as a special guest at this event, Honorable Minister Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed. You have the floor, please. Honorable Minister of Finance, you have our attention, please. Okay, I guess while we wait for the Minister of Finance, let me quickly remind you that Martin, you're going to be around. Martin Davis is around as a member of the panel that will talk about building resilient economy for the future. So Martin, you'll be around as a member of this panel. And of course, we have Yomi Olugbenro, who's also part of the first panel, Oluseyi Arowolo, who is the West Africa International Trade and Regulatory Services Leader at Deloitte Nigeria, as well as the country representative for the World Health Organization, Dr. Walter Kazili Mulumbo. We will appreciate your presence as well at this panel, of course, Martinez. So 4 panel members and a moderator will take you through that, our first panel for about 40 minutes, building a resilient economy for the future. Taking that out of what Martin spoke about earlier, and I particularly love the water cycle. You know, how water goes, evaporation, the condensation, then it all comes down and it goes back up again. I just love that. That's a whole lot of weather. You can read the weather a lot, Martin. I love the weather, by the way. But again, part of the weather right now, the long winter in the Western Hemisphere is proving very fatal, and perhaps we could just get some sunshine across Africa, the Sahara, all the way down to the Western Hemisphere. Thank you so much, Martin. Very informative and practical. Break it down. So let's just quickly allow the Finance Minister to get into the room, get settled for our presentation. I think we'll go straight, taking Martin Davies' presentation, and let's build a resilient first panel. And I'm going to be handing over to the gentleman who is facilitating the first panel, which I just introduced earlier, and that will be the gentleman who will be doing the first panel. That will be where is my friend on the Sheyarolo?
Thank you, Bosin, and joining me to dissect the first issue of the day, which is building a resilient economy for the future in Nigeria, is a very distinguished panel of discussants who you have alluded to. So on my panel this morning, I have Ari Hysen, Country Director for Nigeria, IMF. I have Dr. Walter Kazadi Mulumbo, WHO Country Rep in Nigeria, but I understand he will be represented by Dr. Francis Ukwije. Of course, Dr. Martin Davis, who just presented, is also on my panel. He's the Managing Director, Emerging Markets and Africa, Deloitte. And my one and only West Africa tax leader, Yomi Olugbenro. With this gentleman, we will analyze the current state of the economy and policies aimed at restoring growth and build resilience. They will look at the impact of the Economic Sustainability Plan, the Finance Act 2020, the 2021 budget, and other priority areas. And we will evaluate the impact of the 2021 budget and the underlying parameters, such as exchange rate, GDP, inflation, and other relevant monetary fiscal policy measures. Given our very limited time for this session, I will urge my panelists to keep their responses very crispy but concise. And on this note, I would like to kick off with Harry. I welcome you all, my panelists. So Harry, I have a question for you, which is 2 questions in one. The first one is, how do you determine, what are the parameters that the IMF consider for a resilient economy, and whether the current monetary policies that we have in place in Nigeria are adequate or sufficient to drive growth and build a resilient economy? Over to you, Ari.
Thank you, Chair, for these questions, and thank you, Deloitte, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. So on your first question, and I paid very close attention to Martin's presentation, which was excellent. I think the issue of resilience is the capacity of the economy to withstand shocks. Shocks happen, they may be idiosyncratic, unanticipated, and depending on the economy buffers, the economy can withstand better, mitigate some of the effects of these shocks. Part of the mitigation comes from being diversified, as Martin well mentioned. If you depend on one commodity and the price of this commodity is volatile, and you do not have buffers, you will probably be very procyclical. So your economy will follow this commodity price. And that's actually a problem, because growth, inflation, employment, they all become more volatile together with this natural resource, the price of this natural resource. It happens with other shocks as well. So the ability of an economy to be resilient depends on buffers and the policy setting over a long period of time to be able to mitigate at least and diminish the amplitude of the effects of the shocks on macroeconomic variables. So that's how we think about resilience of an economy. Now, to your question on monetary policy, here we have to differentiate. We are in a pandemic, and it's natural that a central bank, as much as the Ministry of Finance, would like to support the economy during this downturn. And we see monetary policy stance as appropriate at the moment in Nigeria, because first, the central bank took important measures that we actually found timely in 2020 when the pandemic hit. They subsidized some of the credit lines that the central bank offered to the private sector on one hand, and on the other hand, also tried to ease the burden of the situation on borrowers by relaxing a little bit some of its regulations and by giving some forbearance. I mean, these are unprecedented times, atypical, and it's natural that the central bank would like to support. Now, going forward, eventually, that sustained support to the economy through monetary policy, that we're speaking in particular, should then give way to the primacy of the inflation objective. Inflationary pressures have been growing. Many of them in Nigeria are supply side. They are related to food prices and others. If you've seen, the central bank itself in the last two meetings have maintained interest rates, have not reduced interest rates. So it's understanding that despite the need to support the economy, and as I said, monetary policy stance is appropriate at the moment because of that, eventually, because of inflationary pressures, the central bank is concerned, as any central bank should be, with inflationary pressures. So I would expect, we'll have to wait and see, but as we move forward out of this crisis, that more attention will be placed to inflation, and certainly to balance of payments potential problems that may actually affect economic activity and inflation. And the central bank, because the primacy of the inflationary objective within central bank, is going to be paying more attention to that development.
Thank you, Harry. I may probably explore that further with you because there is a section of the Nigerian public that believes that the IMF is part of the challenge rather than the solution for building a resilient economy in Nigeria. But let me dash quickly to Walter. and ably represented by Dr. Francis Ukwije, because Martins alleged that there seems to be a marginalization in terms of development of Africa or homegrown vaccines. So I would like to ask Walter or Francis, what insights the WHO has on the efforts being put in place to secure COVID-19 vaccine for Africa and in particular Nigeria? Francis, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sheye. And thank you, Deloitte, for inviting us. Congratulations on this economic forum. I will apologize on behalf of Dr. Walter, who is the WHO Nigeria representative, for not being able to make it here. I would say that the COVID-19 pandemic, as it affects Nigeria, is not only just a medical challenge in Nigeria, but it touches upon the whole of life and livelihood of Nigerians, including the economy. And I'm going to be looking at what David Martin had mentioned earlier about how this has affected the economic outlook of the country. And we know that it looks like the COVID-19 has further worsened the economic situation of Nigerians. And the estimate is that about additional 10.9 million Nigerians will be pushed into poverty by 2022 by COVID-19. So what that means is that we need to do more. The government of Nigeria, supported by partners, including the WHO at the forefront, is doing a lot in terms of the COVID-19 response. But the vaccines will be the game changer. And at the moment, being a government-led intervention, the government of Nigeria has developed the national COVID-19 vaccines deployment and introduction plan that has marshaled out this plan to be phased into 4. So the very first phase is looking at a very smaller portion of the society, which is mainly the health workers, frontline health workers. And this also will include the very strategic leaders like Mr. President and others. So the second priority group are people that are 50 years and above. And the third priority group is people below 50 years with significant comorbidities. And the last priority, which is priority 4 in the 4th phase, will be other risk groups that are not covered in these other phases. And it's expected that about 70% of the population of Nigeria would have been vaccinated by the end of 2022. Suffice it to say that Nigeria has planned to introduce a number of vaccines, especially those of them that the WHO has already approved for use in the country. By the first quarter of this year, so we would have got the first set of vaccines coming into Nigeria to deal with the first phase. But it looks like there are a lot of support that will be coming to make this happen for Nigeria. So there is this COVID-19 vaccine facility, the COVAX facility, and then there is some support that will be coming from the African Union, and the government of Nigeria is expected to finance the remaining. I'm happy the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic National Planning is here. They have made a lot of effort to ensure that there is funding to finance these vaccines. Now, to your question, in ensuring that there is local vaccine production. So what I had mentioned earlier is looking at the vaccines that have been developed outside the country, and we hope to bring into the country. There are a lot of work that go into vaccine production. So the Honorable Minister of Health and Mr. President working together with the WHO and other partners and the scientists in Nigeria are really working on vaccine candidates for Nigeria. A number of them have already been developed that are going through series of assessment. So we hope that with the very high commitment and political leadership in Nigeria, Nigeria will be announcing maybe in no distant time, perhaps a candidate for vaccine candidate for the country. But it will be useful to note that without waiting for the vaccines that will be produced in Nigeria, Nigeria needs to move very quickly in ensuring that we get access to these vaccines so that we begin to reap the benefits that are very, very huge. Part of what we need to pay attention to is that these vaccines at the moment are being used in the other countries that we know are superpowers. A few days ago, the WHO Director General had a press conference, a joint press conference with the Director General of UNICEF. And what they are saying is that there needs to be an equitable distribution of these vaccines, not just to the superpowers of the world, but we need to also ensure that countries like Nigeria would be able to have these vaccines to support not just the health of Nigerians, but again, to recover the economy that is actually going the other side. I think I will stop at this point, but I will say that the effort so far is good enough, but we expect, and again, I have to say I'm happy that the Minister of Finance is here. We hope that the country will continue in their effort because it looks like the efforts are yielding good results because we are seeing some decline in the AP curve of Nigeria over the past 2 weeks. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Francis, for that insightful response. I will still explore some of the areas with you when I come back. But let me quickly ask Martin a question. And Martin, you know, one of the reasons why I like listening to you is the fact that you provide on-the-ground analysis. You travel across Africa, you know what the attributes of the markets are. I would like to ask, in the light of the global pandemic and the global trends that we see, what should be the focus of business in terms of short, medium term perspectives, especially now that you have mentioned 4 scenarios of new dawn, sun showers, hard rain, and endless winter, which I dread. So Martin, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Look, it's a tough question. I mean, everyone uses the usual stereotypical words like, you know, resilience and agility and consolidation and the like. And I think what happens during any crisis is that it's about frugality. It's about protecting capital. It's about protecting people, your core people as a business. And I think increasingly is, you know, a problem is you have in a country like Nigeria, and Nigeria is very different in that the entire business confidence is, the indicator is the oil price. And, you know, it's the great intangible driver of growth is confidence. And without that, you know, it's a very, everything else is great, but without confidence, you ain't going nowhere, I'd say. So what is the role of business now? Business needs to continue doing what it does, of course, as best as possible. Business must also, I think, increasingly put pressure on governments at all levels to act in a fashion that is very enabling, Nigeria, like South Africa, like many other countries in our region, we lack the fiscal headspace. But ultimately, it's about creating we see the vaccinations now. We have the same challenges down here in the southern part of the continent. It's about having a highly functional state that can do whatever it needs to do to support business in whatever way possible. We're not talking active, subsidization and the like here, but it's just about, trying to be more functional, more pragmatic. I think it's more a question of what the state can do to support. Business will always react in short-term pragmatic fashion, as business does. But for me, the bigger question is, and this is a very sort of esoteric maybe answer, is how do state institutions react in more very responsive manners that can better protect GDP, protect jobs, protect economic activity during these very very challenging times, to say the least.
So Martin, are you suggesting that it's a macroeconomic issue and there is really nothing that businesses can do in the short term and medium term to at least cope with these challenges?
Well, as I said,
I'm not asking to give a free opinion, but just a perspective.
I'll give you every opinion. It's all for free. Whether it's right or not, it's another story. But I think for me, it's of course business will shore up balance sheet, protect capital, protect people, do what it needs to do, and wait for better days. Wait for sort of an easing of it. I think a lot of us have a very much of almost a siege mentality right now. A lot of firms do. That's my observations. But I think at the same time, I mean, look at the times like now. I mentioned earlier the free trade agenda. Now, I'm somewhat skeptical about a Pan-African, truly continental free trade arrangement. The geography is just too disparate and too wide. But at a more local level, within Nigeria, within the region, it's very important. This is maybe more relevant for smaller countries in terms of demographics than a country like Nigeria, but the markets are arguably unviable. Markets are unable to operate in such small economies. You have to build, have to be a consolidation, a greater sort of economy of scale, if you will. So how do small economies in West Africa start to liberalize? Doing the counterintuitive at times of crisis. And one of the questions I saw in the Q&A panel was talking about import substitution. I don't think import substitution is not industrial strategy. It's not. But countries seem to be a bit more, they retreat into a more sort of unilateral position. I think that's wrong. I think at the same time, business needs to be doing more to integrate itself in the region, perhaps, and not so much often rely on sovereigns to act, rather act on maybe, arguably organized business or even sizable companies who have the influence to do this, to be more, how can I say, more market fundamentalist, more free marketeer, more free trade. It's counterintuitive during times of challenge or crisis, but this is, I think, what we really need to do. And countries in Africa need to. This is the Asia story, not just Asian countries, but provinces in China, where countries, territories need to differentiate themselves, and they need to compete for capital. It's not just financial capital. Most importantly, it's human capital, and that really is what Nigerian states and sovereign states in West Africa need to increasingly do, is differentiate, liberalize, be more functional at the state level, ultimately drive competitiveness, and differentiate yourselves from one's neighbors. I think that's the real play here for me in the region.
Thank you, Martin. I will still come back to explore some issues with you, but let me make a quick dash to my West Africa tax leader, Yomi Olubenro. I know he's itching very much to make some critical input. Now, if I take something from the comment or remarks by my CEO, he alluded to the fact that we are looking to about 70% of the budget to be funded from non-oil sources, which a significant amount of this will be from tax. Yomi, you've appeared on so many channels and platforms to talk about this. What should Nigerians expect in terms of the tax landscape, bearing in mind that we are in a pandemic and there is a need to strike a balance between tax regulators and taxpayer expectations? Over to you, Yomi.
All right, thank you, Sheye. You're right. If you look at the budget 2021, much lower than 30% is being expected from oil tax revenue sources. Actually, it's within the range of about 25% of the budgeted revenue. But if we look at the mix, we will understand that the reason why the oil share is that low, it's not so much because the non-oil tax revenue has increased significantly, right? So what we have for non-oil tax revenue is actually below 20%. So the bulk of the expected revenue of about 7.9 trillion in total that the federal government is expecting to make in 2021 is coming from independent and other sources. And that's about almost 55% of that is coming from independent and other sources. So what the government has acknowledged is that the environment and the business climate is such that there can be a reasonable expectation of a massive jump in oil, in tax revenue, and therefore government has proactively looked into the direction of other independent sources that it can use to fund the budget for 2021. And even the entire capital spending, there's a huge portion of deficit that is inherent in that is dependent on local and external borrowing. The deficit number alone, if you look at it, of about 5.7 trillion, is almost 4 times the amount the federal government intends to raise from non-oil tax revenue. So it's not so much of the growing base of the non-oil tax revenue, but so much of looking in the direction of government operating entities. What can we do creatively to save on costs and from this entity and be able to put more money to the center? Now, what does this say because your question is targeting the tax landscape? I think there's still a long road to travel in growing our non-oil tax revenues base in the country. And that's why, for me, I think the focus on taxes will continue for a long time to come. But I think the good news for 2021 is that as far as the current year is concerned, government recognize that the state of the economy is too fragile to have increases in taxes or to even contemplate introducing another type of tax. So there are no new taxes for 2021. There is no increase, at least no direct increases in tax rates. In fact, the different provisions we have in the Finance Act 2020, most of the provisions offer palliatives and incentive to taxpayer. For example, the cut in the minimum tax rate to by half to 50%. Exemption of the minimum wage earner, those who are at the very low end of the spectrum, from personal income taxes. You have extension of the tax exemption that micro and small businesses enjoying to now include education taxes, and a number of those provisions. So what the government has done is to say, in the short term, we recognize that this economy is at a state where we can't push more pressure again on the taxpayer, whether individual on the corporate side. So what the Revenue Authority will do for 2021 will be essentially to optimize collection from the existing tax types and how to leverage technology, data, intelligence, so that they can collect more from the existing taxpayer and make sure that the tax penetration is deepened. And we've seen that revenue authorities are increasingly embracing technology, more and more at the state and at the federal level. What this will do is that it will not only make paying taxes more easier, but I think it will also greatly enhance their capacity to gather intelligence, to be more efficient in tackling evasion. So small businesses or corporate taxpayer who probably have been handling their tax compliance process in a slightly different way need to recognize that with the increasing use of technology, there's need to be a lot more transparency and proactivity so that they don't incur penalties. All right, so that's what is going to happen. I also see that because some of the changes we have in the Finance Act 2020 also relates to non-resident companies, digital player with significant economic presence, and trying to bring those who were supposed to be paying taxes in Nigeria and who haven't done that. There will be a lot of focus by the revenue authorities on getting their Nigerian customers and associates of these foreign businesses to bring them into compliance. So corporates also need to review their operating model, and make sure that their relationship with counterparties who are trading from outside of the country is reviewed from a tax perspective, so that entities who may potentially bring them into rounds of question with the Revenue Authority, they can proactively deal with that. So that's what we will have in the interim. And as the economy continue to recover, sufficiently, the expectation is that in the future, there's a very likelihood that government will then revisit some of these taxes and, to see which one we can raise the base. I know there have been a lot of focus on indirect taxes lately, which is the right way to go. VAT, customs and excise, stamp duty. So, but that will be a matter for the future. In the interim, it's about making sure that the compliance process is optimized by taxpayers, and trying to ensure that the provisions of the Finance Act is critically analyzed. Some will create some extra, pressure on the need for transparency and accountability, and all of that, but to also leverage those that provide cushion and palliative, so that ultimately the business can thrive, using our word in Deloitte in the current year.
Thank you, Yomi. But you touched on a particular issue and I don't intend this to be a banana peel. You mentioned palliatives. There is a section of the Nigerian taxpayers that believe that the palliatives and fiscal stimulus that the government brought to address the impact of the pandemic are not adequate enough. Do you happen to share this view? And do you foresee any aspect in which improvements can really be made?
Yeah, it's quite expected. If you ask anyone whether whatever has been given or whatever government is doing is enough, chances are that you're going to get a unanimous no. If you ask me that same question, I will tell you no. I want more. We all want more.
No, Francis,
but I think
Francis said that government has done enough around fighting COVID-19.
Well, that's maybe on the health side. I think the response of the government from arresting the health emergency, I think is quite phenomenal. We can see the statistics relative to other countries.
We did that phenomenal response around tax.
But I think the reality is that the size of the fiscal headroom is what will determine, how much the government have in its cover to be able to provide a palliative. Some of the things that happened is that ahead of the pandemic last year, I think there was a very timely intervention that was actually intended for a completely different purpose, but that ended up to be the greatest, tax palliative that the government could have introduced. So you recall that the Finance Act 2019 that was signed just few months or few weeks ahead of the pandemic actually did make some provisions, exemptions. That was when we have the novel exemption for micro and small businesses. Individuals have exemption from capital gain taxes on up to 10 million naira if they have compensation for loss of employment and all of that. So these were done ahead of the pandemic. So when the pandemic hit us, from a tax side, what the government could do, in the interim, is just to make sure that the revenue authorities recognize the practicality of the restrictions and the limitations of physical movement, and all of that, and make sure that they could provide other administrative measures. So that's what happened from a tax side. So if the exemptions that were given to micro businesses, for example, weren't given as at the time it was given, it would have been part of the measures that we will be asking for. But I know that a number of individual taxpayers have also did raise voices to say, look, you gave micro businesses tax exemption. How about individuals? And then you have that response in 2020. Now, is that response sufficient? The answer is probably no. I'm sure government will probably also say, we know there's more that we can do, but the truth is that we need to take measured steps, considering the fact that we need to balance, like you also said, raising revenue to still deliver on, all of the promises on health, on infrastructure and all of that, and also provide cushioning. So the way I see it is that, yes, there's a lot more that can be done. There's a lot more that we are asking for, but the steps taken by the government relative to the size of, of the purse, relative to the fiscal headroom, and if you compare to our comparable, I think it's a good intervention.
Thank you so much, Yomi. I will rush back to Ari now and ask him another two-in-one question. So Ari, there is a feeling that Nigeria has a number of capable, competent economists, but there is this feeling that we do not seem to have harnessed those capacities enough in our macroeconomic management approach. Do you share this perspective? And do you think that the CBN should continue to adopt the current interventionist policy around the foreign exchange rate, or should adopt or evaluate a full liberalization of that system in Nigeria? Over to you, Ari.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, policymakers in Nigeria are extremely capable. I have no doubt about that. The challenges have been huge. In fact, not only to Nigeria, to any policymaker around the world. I mean, just in this case of the pandemic, we are talking about a huge shock, and in between health and economics, it has been very difficult. For example, just think about declaring a lockdown, and it's like a sudden stop of economic activity. Which policymaker will take that lightly? It's not an easy shock to deal with. So I think we need to be humble. I was policymaker myself in the past before coming to the IMF, so I feel the difficulties of actually engaging and trying to be innovative, and many times without the resources and reduced space for supporting the economy. This is a major thing to do. So I think we have to be very humble about the difficulties. To your question on the exchange rate, we economists, we don't like to project exchange rates, certainly not for the short term, simply because the exchange rates can go anywhere, and we typically in the profession call these a random walk. It can go anywhere, specifically if the exchange rate is fully flexible. But I don't want to leave you and our colleagues in the panel without an answer. We just published an Article 4 consultation report, and in one of the chapters of this report, we do talk about several models that the team estimated regarding where the real effective exchange rate, which is not the nominal exchange rate, it has foreign inflation, domestic inflation, and the weight of the countries that Nigeria trades with as part of this measurement. But that real effective exchange rate would seem to be on the overvalue side, not by much, but some overvaluation. That would more or less match what we observe in the parallel market premium vis-a-vis the official exchange rate. So if I will have to think about a direction for where the exchange rate would have to be, probably would that to be for a more depreciated naira rather than a more appreciated naira. But I wouldn't comment on how much necessarily, because models are models, reality is the reality. Exchange rates can go to many places, and they will be dependent on various variables, including, as well mentioned by Martin, the price of oil. If the price of oil continues to go up, probably that will positively affect the naira. The same thing, the reverse would happen if the oil prices go down. Also, what portfolio flows will do, other trading partners, what they do and how their economies evolve. is a very important aspect because demand for Nigerian products, including oil, but not only, could go up. So all these things matter a lot, and it becomes very difficult to project, as I was saying before, what the exchange rate will do in the near future. But I think that the direction would be towards a more depreciated Naira rather than a less depreciated Naira. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. But before I let you go, and there is one of our participants that seem to have read the report you are alluding to, and is asking that in that report, you asserted that to rely on progressive and efficiency enhancing measures with higher value-added and excise tax rates awaiting a firm economic recovery. Quote, is IMF urging the fiscal authorities in Nigeria to raise value-added tax to mobilize more revenue? If yes, how soon could that be? I don't know if you can quickly touch on that before I move to Francis.
Absolutely. These are important sovereign decisions that Nigeria will have to take. But let me just say that in our view, during the current economic situation, this is not a good time in our view to raise tax rates. You certainly would like to wait for the economic recovery to take root before taking such a measure. And it seems that the government is going in this direction, and we find that very reasonable and sensible. Who would want to raise rates when the economy is facing this pandemic? It's very complicated. But we have to think a little bit going forward. So in the short term, what we are saying is that tax compliance would probably be possible to tighten a little bit. So simply because tax revenues as a share of GDP in Nigeria is very low. That share is very low. It's in fact among the lowest around the world. So I think it's very important to have in mind that tax collection would need to increase in Nigeria. Part will come from the economic recovery, but also certainly through two areas: more tax compliance that certainly needs to increase. And going forward, once economic recovery takes root, certainly rates can go up to including on VAT to higher levels, similar to what is observed even in sub-Saharan Africa and in Western Africa. Nigeria still has a much lower VAT rate than other countries. So this shouldn't happen now, but certainly going forward, we think that would be appropriate to consider raising some of the tax rates once economic recovery takes root.
Thank you, Harry, for your response. At least there are some positions in which IMF has found the positions of the Nigerian government very reasonable and laudable. So let me move to Walter. And very quickly, Walter, there is concern about doctor-to-patient ratio in Nigeria. This was there before the pandemic, and this has also escalated since the pandemic. So my question is, to what extent is the Nigerian health sector comparable to what obtained in other African countries from a WHO point of view? Francis.
Thank you very much, Chair. The Nigerian health sector is very unique, and if you know that Nigeria runs a federal system of government, so what that means is that there are three main tiers of government in Nigeria that potentially have authorities around health, and this is the federal, the state, and the local government. So part of what is going on in the country is a situation where there is a kind of a symbiotic relationship between the federal and the states in particular around dealing with health. Now, issues around human resource for health in the whole of the world we can say is one of the Achilles heels in the health sector, and there is no health sector in the whole world that has adequate human resources to take care of their needs. What is happening in Nigeria particularly is a situation where we have more of production of health workers, but many of these health workers do go abroad to seek greener pastures. Given the situation that COVID has brought within the country, so there was a general decline in the provision of health services for the country. If you check data coming from the Federal Ministry of Health, comparing the month in 2019, and then the corresponding months in 2020 and now in 2021, you will see a significant change, a significant reduction in provision of essential health services in terms of antenatal care, people assessing, children assessing immunization, outpatient and inpatient care. All of them reduced due to COVID-19. Of course, there is some form of recovery that we started seeing towards the end of 2020. But that is not just because of the reduction in the number of health workers, but we saw that even though those health workers were there initially, they were not empowered to provide those services as they are needed because they were not protected enough. And of course, the lockdown also restricted movements. So what the federal government has done is to ensure that, and this is with support from the WHO and other partners, so we have appropriate determination of the staffing needs of the country at the moment. And we have developed what we call a health workforce profile that enables the country determine where they are at any time, not only at the federal, but at the state levels. WHO supported the country in developing this and handed that over to the Honorable Minister of Health towards the last quarter of last year. What we will be seeing moving forward is a situation where the country, just by the click of a button, will determine where their health workforce is. Comparing Nigeria with the other countries in Africa is a bit difficult because we know that Nigeria has not only the largest population, but again, we have peculiar situations concerning health based on the political economy that I had mentioned earlier. So many other African countries are mainly unitary states that could take decisions at the center. But in Nigeria, it is not so. So part of what has also happened is a proactive measure by the Federal Ministry of Health and partners in training health workers now, not only for provision of essential health services, but again, in managing emergencies for health security moving forward. As you are aware, the COVID-19 situation is still here with us. As at yesterday, we had not less than 142,000 confirmed cases, with about 116,000 of them having been discharged, and about 1,702 have died. So you see that the situation is still spreading. So part of what we are doing is supporting the government in ensuring that they continue to provide essential health services while also fighting the pandemic using the workforce that they have within the country. I dare say that the introduction of the planned introduction of the COVID vaccine would also bring in its own challenges, because these are new vaccines. Nobody in this country has administered those vaccines before. So it introduces new challenges that the country is now handling in terms of training of those health workers. And these health workers are not just at the federal, they will have to be those even in primary healthcare centers where these vaccines will be deployed. I'll stop at this point.
Thank you so much, Francis. I will come back for your closing remarks, but let me move quickly to Martin. And one of our participants has shot a question across to Martin's, and I will read it out, permit me. He said, government and some other stakeholders have been making submissions that local manufacturing is the way to diversify Nigerian economy. You also alluded to that in your presentation. What are practical ways to achieve this competitively when all indices to support local manufacturing, in bracket, FX, volatility, consumer appetite for imported goods, electricity supply, etc. are weak?
Yeah, thank you. I think I wrote a bit of a response to that question earlier, but I'll say that clearly it's not, industrialization is not a policy switch. We know that. This is it's a generational play. And maybe if I use the word industrialization too ambitiously, maybe the better word is local value addition. And I think for me, it's I know there's been attempts in Nigeria, there's been attempts in South Africa, and they haven't really moved the needle around creating special economic zones. Now, why do countries require special economic zones? Well, is it not indicative of the fact that the national economy simply is not working to create pockets of industrialization or value add? So, and again, taking a leaf out of Asia's book, there was linking a question that was posed earlier. We saw dysfunctional economies in Asia, particularly China, in the late 70s, early 80s, start to experiment with very independent, very well strategically positioned coastal special economic zones. It was as about increasing revenue from exports as it was a national experiment to see what would happen. And the independence of these zones resulted in literally market forces being unleashed. And that for me is something which Nigeria, I'm aware of the Lekki zone, etc. But how can zones be created? It takes strong political will to do so, and have their own sets of unique legislation, particularly, and Yomi will know better than anybody, around tax issues and around labor issues. And these dedicated geographic zones can be carved out, if only as experiments. When countries have such low, provocative point, such very low manufacturing value add, such as Nigeria, what do you have to lose? Create these dedicated zones, liberalize, free up, give independence, have active business participation in the management of these zones, and see where it takes us. Again, this is not a short-term policy switch. This is a long-term generational play, and we have to start somewhere and start to scale. And again, I think you move away from these debates around import substitution, and the national economy is too fragmented, too unwieldy to have a necessary agility to create the necessary infrastructure, both hard and soft enabling policy, to allow industry to thrive in the economy. And so my simple suggestion is very pragmatically run SEZs and highly incentivized.
Thank you, Martin. Time is no longer my best friend on this session, but I will need to touch base with my West Africa tax leader, Yomi Olubenro. And Yomi, my question is this. The issue of ease of paying taxes, is it a function of legislation or administration or both? And if legislation, in what way has the Finance Act 2020 enhanced the criteria for ease of paying taxes? 2 in 1.
Okay. Thank you, Sheye. So to answer your question quite directly, the issue of ease of paying taxes is a function of both the legislation and administration. But we know that to a very large extent, the law provides the foundation for the administrators, to be able to run the business. So, and that's why we look into the law to say what provisions are there, to create or provide an enabling environment or a simplified environment for taxes to be paid. And I mean, just like its predecessor, Finance Act of 2019, the 2020 Finance Act also made some very good attempts, at consolidating and institutionalizing some of the measures that the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, has been working on around easing the difficulties of paying taxes. And I would just mention maybe just one of them, quite simple but fundamental. Which is the introduction of electronic communications, for example, in the process of tax administration in the country. Therefore, rather than the traditional physical courier, of assessment and correspondences and physical presence of taxpayer, a lot more can now be done virtually because based on the amendment we have in Finance Act 2019, we have similar provision in Finance Act we have a provision in 2019 that kind of focuses on individual, but in 2020 Finance Act, we have provisions relating to companies. So taxpayers and revenue authorities can now exchange electronic correspondences. Now, the exemption I spoke to when I was responding to your question earlier around tax exemption for those living below the poverty line, I mean, those who are earning minimum wage and less, as well as education tax exemption for micro and small businesses, they are all part of the measures towards making sure that we focus our energy on where it really matters, and it eases the burden of paying taxes. On the back of that, from an administration perspective, you see revenue authorities now opening up online portal, for tax assessments, for returns, for payments, tax audit reviews, tax audit meetings are being conducted virtually, and remember also that the Companies Act 2020 that was signed last year also made provisions for some measures that were aimed at making doing business in Nigeria easier. You have virtual AGM introduced, small businesses are no longer mandated to have a statutory audit, one member limited liability company. So we are making incremental progresses from a regulation and from an administration perspective. If you look back 3 years ago, you will appreciate that some progress have been made. If we consolidate on this and then continue to focus on working around the threatening challenges, particularly maybe some of the technology platforms that are being rolled out by revenue authorities. So if we improve on the user experience, the friendliness of the interfaces, we can get the compliance process a lot better. But maybe just on a much broader perspective though, the bigger question that needs to be resolved when it comes to making fundamental changes that will impact the overall ease of paying taxes, we still need to deal with the issue of multiplicity of taxes, and that's a legislation, that's a regulation issue, because the factors that are considered when you are judging the ease of paying taxes in a country, it includes the number of taxes that you have taxpayers to pay. It includes the amount of time that is required, which is also a trigger or determined by the number of taxes they need to comply with. The simplicity of the process, the predictability of the rules, there are a lot more that we can do in this area. So in as much as we are making piecemeal changes through the Finance Act process, which is quite commendable, the right way to go, but it doesn't really eliminate the need for a comprehensive regulatory reform. In fact, making an annual amendment by way of Finance Act itself can, after some time, even create some bit of problem, because what you're going to have is that you're going to have your tax law spread across multiple pieces of legislation, and we can also complicate the process because you are looking at what was changed in 2019, that further amended in 2020, that further reintroduced in 2021. So ideally, every 3 to 5 years, what you are supposed to do is to have a consolidation of all of the changes and provide a single reference for all of the laws. So we are making appreciable progress, but we need to recognize that it's a marathon. We have started well, we are headed in the good direction, but we need to move forward faster, because the journey is still far.
Thank you, Yomi. And with those remarks from you, bearing in mind that the message of eternity cannot be delivered without leaving the pulpit, I would like to thank all my panelists for this session, for their very insightful contributions. And I know that any other time we invite you to be part of this program, you will also be willing to join us. Bosin, over to you as you take over from here. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sheyi Arowolo. Thank you so much to members of your panel. Martin Davis, thank you so much. Ison, thank you so much. The representative of Dr. Walter from the World Health Organization, and Yomi Olugbero, thank you so much for those interventions. And of course, to our participants, nearly 700 of you, and you sent in tons of questions and comments and opinion through the chat box. We appreciate that so much. Keep them coming. Thank you very much, my panelists, for this first part of it. It is time now for us to listen to the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning on behalf of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. She's representing the authority of the government of Nigeria at this Deloitte 2021 Nigeria Economic Outlook Conference. I have the singular honor and privilege to invite the Honorable Minister, Mrs. Dr. Zainab Samshina Ahmed, to please take the floor and deliver her presentation as the special guest of this 2021 edition. Honorable Minister, you have the floor, please. Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Finance, we are waiting for your presentation. We appreciate the fact that you've logged on to the conference for quite some time, and we do appreciate the time you are sparing out of your official duties on behalf of the government to be present at this particular event and to speak to us. We're now waiting for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Omo, for the introduction. Let me apologize for joining the meeting late. I had some delays and some technical glitches. I hope you can hear me.
Perfectly well, Honorable Minister.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Let me start by thanking Deloitte for organizing this, and specifically my brother Fatai and the team. I have a presentation to make on behalf of the Federal Government of Nigeria, and the theme of my presentation is the economic outlook for 2021. Can you move to the next slide, please? Let me welcome all the participants in this meeting and say that my presentation will be taking a couple of steps. First of all, I'll be speaking to setting the context, which I must say has been very well set by Martin. And I'm glad that the delay happened because I was now able to listen to Martin and to the panelists. So that's a plus for me. I will also be speaking to the meeting about achieving economic recovery, the actions that we have taken and some of the plans that we take. And then one of my favorite topics, the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative, and to say upright that Deloitte helped us in developing this initiative and putting it to use. And then I will be speaking to some aspects of the Finance Act 2020. Next slide, please. So it's an honor and a privilege to be here. And I must congratulate Deloitte because this forum is not the first one that Deloitte has made. Deloitte has been consistent in organizing economic outlooks, and it has become an avenue for sharing ideas on our current economic development. And I want to urge Deloitte to keep this up. Next slide, please. Nigeria, like other countries of the world, have been affected significantly by the COVID-19, not only on the health front, but more significantly on the economic front. And after a year of exploring conventional and unconventional policy strategies in both advanced and emerging economies, it has become clear that we are all operating in this very high, uncertain environment, and each country still has to take policy measures that are most relevant to their socio-economic and political context, and that are reasonable and affordable, and also providing benefits that government can afford within its fiscal limits. So there's this misdiagnosis that is possible of the real challenges, or misapplication of policy measures that is a major risk that we see. And if we do fall into any of this major risk, we can do even greater damage to our economies than the disease itself. So whatever we do as a government, we do it with great caution, knowing that the consequences could be dire for the economy. And with this in mind, I'd like to share with you some of the challenges that we face as from our view in the Nigerian economy. Next slide, please. I'm sure everybody knows that COVID-19 has triggered economic downturn globally, and it has also triggered economic downturn in Nigeria. We went into a recession in the second quarter of 2020 with a decline of minus 6.1%. Economic activities in the country are beginning to recover very slowly, and this recovery is reflected in the reduced negative growth of minus 3.6 in the second quarter, in the third quarter of 2020 compared to the second quarter. This in itself is a positive development, because it shows that some of the measures that the government has taken is actually yielding positive results. Slide 6, please. So while we had technically gone into recession, having witnessed 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, I would say that the most impacted sectors in the quarter 3 are the transportation sector, the oil refinery sector, real estate, accommodation and food services, trade, education, crude, petroleum and gas production, as well as the insurance industry. But there are some sectors that actually grew even during this pandemic. And these sectors include quarrying and other mineral production, the telecommunications sector, the cement and manufacturing sector, the financial services has continued to grow, chemicals and pharmaceuticals, food and beverages, public administration, broadcasting and construction. So these sectors have continued to grow. By 2021, the Nigerian economy will recover from recession. And this is according to the IMF, that the Nigerian economy will rebound from the estimated contraction of minus 3.2% on 2020 to a growth of 1.5% in 2021. So between 2023 to 2025, Nigeria's growth is expected to surpass the growth of advanced economies. And you can see from the chart that is in front of you. Next slide, please. The National Bureau of Statistics, our own NBS, projects a higher growth of 3%. This is compared to the 1.5% projected by the IMF for 2021. And in line with this production and consistent commitment and focus on the side of the government to accelerate economic recovery from recession, and also to return to a diversified, sustainable, and inclusive growth, we believe that a growth higher than 1.5% for 2021 is attainable. The expectation is anchored on the various interventions introduced to cushion the effect of the negative consequences of the pandemic, some of which I will touch on shortly. While there's always a lag between intervention and outcome, we can already see the benefits on the economy as recorded in the better than expected results of the third quarter of 2020. Data for quarter 4 2020 is expected to be released by the NBS later in this month of February. Next slide, please. So like other economies, our fiscal position experienced significant pressure due to the sudden but necessary expenditures we have had to undertake while at the same time facing declining revenue. Preliminary figures indicate that as at the end of 2020, the federal government's retained revenue was 3.94 trillion. This represents 73% of the targeted revenue in the 2020 amended Appropriation Act. The federal government share of all revenue was 1.52 trillion, representing 157% performance. So this is an abnormal performance, and it is so because we had projected a crude oil price of $28 per barrel, but we were lucky that the average was much higher than that at the close of 2020. Non-oil revenues, on the other hand, was 1.28 trillion, representing 79% of revised targets. Company income tax, VAT, also performed at 82 and 68% respectively. Customs revenue performed at 79%. And other revenues, and this include the independent revenues that I heard Tayo mention earlier on, was 993.73 trillion. And we're putting a lot of attention in this area because we see a lot of potential. With respect to money aggregates, the federal government maintained and accommodated a monetary policy stance for the majority of the year. And this reflects the concerns about the impact of the pandemic. So we had an expansionary monetary stance as well. We had to apply considerable efforts to ease the effects of the pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns on households and on businesses to complement private sector relief funds. The Central Bank of Nigeria had rolled out some targeted interventions, and I'm sure participants are familiar with some of these interventions. Some of these interventions included the targeted credit facility, the agribusiness small and medium investment scheme, the healthcare support intervention facility, where up to 72.9 billion was provided to 73 projects comprising 26 pharmaceutical projects and 47 hospitals. There's also funding provided, special funding provided for the Creative Industry Financing Initiative, where 322 beneficiaries benefited. We had also the Youth Investment Fund facility, where 395 youths benefited from this facility. We have also the National Mass Metering Program, where 18.58 billion was provided for the procurement of up to about 347,000 electricity meters to ensure that citizens are paying for electricity that is consumed. Next slide, please. So this has been a journey, starting from 2016 when the country went into recession, and the government took a number of measures, addressed the initial shock of the economy going into recession. We developed the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which was our response to that recession of 2016. And that helped us to exit recession 4 quarters after we went into recession. Subsequently, we set up, and I said with the support of Deloitte, a strategic revenue growth initiative, which is meant to drive domestic revenue mobilization and move the revenue to GDP ratio of Nigeria from the then 8% to 15%. Now that revenue to GDP ratio has declined further to 6%, unfortunately, due to the impacts of the COVID-19. We also developed the Economic Sustainability Plan, which was designed to respond to the national health and economic security emergency posed by COVID-19. We have developed the medium-term development plan 2021 to 2025. It's in the final stages of development. And side by side, we're also developing a long-term national development plan, the Nigeria Agenda 2050. This Nigeria Agenda 2050 is designed to enable us meet the SDG goals, as well as the Africa Union Agenda 2063. So what have we done to achieve economic growth? So with the background in mind, let me turn to the highlights of some of the plans that we have had to put in place for recovery, first of all, in 2021. So in 2021, our fiscal initiatives are driven by the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative, as well as the Finance Act 2020, supported, of course, by the 2021 Appropriation Act. The SRG and the Finance Act will aid the economic recovery process of the Nigerian economy. These initiatives will help us to grow fiscal revenues, help us to improve the ease of doing business, counter the impact of oil fluctuations and the integrated fiscal, and also help us in further integrating fiscal, monetary, and trade policies. We have to, within these two instruments, grow the level of the fiscal revenues, improve the ease of doing business, counter the impact of oil price fluctuations, integrate fiscal and monetary policies. Next slide, please. I'd like to speak about my favorite topic, which is the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative. The SRGI is a blueprint, a mechanism for enhancing fiscal revenues from 6% to 15% of GDP by the year 2023. This initiative seeks to achieve sustainability in revenue generation, identify, enforce new and existing revenue streams, and achieve cohesion of our people and the tools that we use. The SRGI is designed around 3 thematic areas. The first thematic area, which is achieving sustainability in revenue generation, is centered around 4 main levers, and this includes improving collection, closing legal loopholes, collaborating between trading partners, and managing performance. There are a number of initiatives, 21 of them actually, that were carefully selected through a multi-functional selection process. Each of these thematic areas are encapsulated in a portfolio of initiatives with clear deliverables, clear KPIs, targets, timelines assigned to specific ministries, departments, and agencies for implementation. So the second thematic area, identifying new and enforcing existing revenue streams, also is designed around some main levers, which included identifying new taxes, broadening the tax base, expanding and improving VAT, and this is how come we were able to increase VAT from 5% to 7.5%, targeting high net worth individuals, and reviving the economic sectors. And in trying to achieve cohesion within the revenue ecosystem, we had to review the operating models of the critical collecting agencies. We had to align stakeholders on a single platform, for example, the single trading platform, to improve internal capabilities and enhance and automate a lot of our collection processes. Next slide, please. So the SRGI was an instrument that helped us to move from plan to action. The SRGI involved a top-down approach with the numbers in mind that will need to be met, and supplemented by an bottom-up operating improvement levers. Next slide, please. Through this initiative, we are building and strengthening revenue-generating systems through the application of the right incentives, the right safeguards, and performance management systems. There are several initiatives under the SRGI with revenue generation and enhanced potential, which we are closely monitoring using data-driven performance management to achieve results and the set targets. So the SRGI, we're partnering with relevant ministries, departments, and agencies, but most importantly with the states, because the states also have to contribute to this aspiration of growing our revenue to GDP from 6% to 15% by 2023. We're working right now to review the SRGI, assess what the achievements that we have made, refine it, and subsequently we will launch SRGI 2.0. It will still involve a top-down approach that will be driven by enhanced data and technology to complement the bottom-up approach, which will be aimed at improving our operational efficiencies. We're willing and able to partner with all state governments that have not yet joined us on this transformative journey. Next slide, please. So this graph, this slide shows you where we are in terms of revenue benchmarks. So even when we attain 15%, Nigeria will still be in the lower cadres of revenue performance. You can see South Africa, this is 2018, by the way, South Africa at 29%, Kenya at 18%, and Ghana at 14%, and Nigeria is at 6% at this time. So we need to move the needle. We need to enhance our revenue performance. To help us drive revenue and to help us improve fiscal performance, we have so far developed two financial instruments, the Finance Act 2019 and closely followed by the Finance Act 2020. The Finance Act 2019, I heard Taiwo really elucidating some of the key provisions that we had made fortuitously to improve on the fiscal environment, to enhance the growth performance of small, medium enterprises, as if we knew that we were going to have a COVID-19 crisis. So what we did by reducing taxes from 30% to 20% for medium-sized enterprises and from 30% to 0% is what other countries were doing when COVID hit and everybody had to adjust. But the Finance Act 2020 is an add-on to the Finance Act 2019. It's still designed to enable us enhance counter-cyclical measures and also introduce special crisis response initiative. We also have measures in the provisions in the Finance Act that is enabling us to reform fiscal incentives for job creation, fiscal incentives to give relief to taxpayers through mass transit by reviewing downwards import duty regime within the transport sector, by exempting minimum wage earners from paying personal income tax, by reducing the minimum tax payable by corporate entities, and also by exempting animal feeds, rentals and leases of agricultural equipment, commercial aircraft parts from paying of VAT. The Finance Act also contained measures that were targeted at fiscal responsibility, enhancing fiscal responsibility and public procurement, thereby amending the Public Procurement Act and the Fiscal Responsibility Act. The Finance Act also has provisions that is enabling us to ensure closer coordination between the monetary, trade, and fiscal authorities. Next slide, please. The Finance Act also had a provision to bring into law some of the very important measures that have been taken in enhancing the ease of doing business. Improving the ease of doing business is important to help foster Nigeria's recovery, as micro, small, medium enterprises today contribute 84% to the national GDP. They also account for 96% of businesses and 64% of unemployment. So the Finance Act mitigates double taxation risks for the MSMEs. The Finance Act also limits the deductible interest paid by Nigerian companies on loans from foreign lenders. The Finance Act makes provisions for tax-free period for the agricultural sector, and it also incorporates tin capitalization rules. The Finance Act also exempts small companies that are already exempted from paying company income tax and VAT, now also exempted from paying tertiary education tax. There are a number of several changes that are contained in the Finance Act. Now, I want to urge everyone in the meeting to please get a hold of this Finance Act and see some of these changes. We have, in this process, introduced 80 changes into 14 different fiscal laws across the economy. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I want to conclude by thanking participants for being here, and also, previous slide, please. Previous slide, please. And I want to assure you that the federal government remains focused on its economic policies. We remain focused in working to improve revenue generation, enhancing economic competitiveness, attracting foreign direct investments, and ensuring the overall sustainability of the Nigerian economy, of the macroeconomic environment. And some of the work we've done is evident by the significant efforts to turn the economy onto a path of sustainable growth. We have also taken measures to ensure early response to the welfare of the people by the responses that we took to support during the pandemic, and also to provide targeted support to businesses, launching sustainability plan and the strategic revenue growth initiative, timely passage of the budgets for 2020 and 2021, as well as the finance supporting their supporting finance act. We have been facing significant headwinds, and this COVID-19 is just one of them. The health challenge is a major one, but we also have security challenges. We have volatility in oil and non-oil revenue. However, it is our hope that working together, businesses, professionals in the industry, getting our processes right, getting our priorities right, will enable us to use this opportunity to bring the economy to a path of growth and sustainability, and to restore confidence in the people, to recommit to the population and the citizens of Nigeria of the social contract that must exist between the government and the citizens. I want to thank you very much again, to thank Deloitte for this opportunity, and thank all the participants that have been here today. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister for Finance, Budget and National Planning, Dr. Mrs. Zainab Samsuna Ahmed. Thank you so much for your presentation. We appreciate that so much. On behalf of about 700 participants, including members of Deloitte Nigeria and those who are watching this on YouTube, close to 1,000 here and around the world, we say a very big thank you for your presentation. In fact, the most, I looked into the Q&A box, and the most common request I'm getting is for your presentation to be shared. It was also very opposite and very important that you listened to Martin Davis' presentation and the first panel. We appreciate that very much. And of course, in talking about the Deloitte team, we appreciate them also for bringing you here on board from Fatai Ferrari, who is the CEO for the West Africa, and Sheye Arowolo, Yomi Olugbenro, of course. You know, the Finance Minister, Honorable Minister, you deal with all of these folks. So there's quite a whole lot of people you have to remember their names and all of them. So quite a whole lot are in your position. We really appreciate your presentation and making the time to stay with us on this. We will do a group photograph a bit later, but I want to quickly take one or two questions from the participants to you, the Honorable Minister. And I will start with the presentation made by Martin Davis. And his presentation dwelt on what I refer to as the traffic light, the red, the orange, and the green. The red is response to the COVID-19 crisis and the economic problems. The second, which he called recovery phase, I call that the orange light. Then the green light is thrive. So respond, recover, and thrive. So red, orange, and green. Now, briefly, in what stage do you think Nigeria really is? And your presentation, what does it really point to? Are we still at a recovery phase? And do you think everything you have presented can take Nigeria to the thriving phase? That's the first question, Honorable Minister.
Well, we are, so there's a bit of a mix for me. When you look at the COVID-19, the question has still not been answered. Are we still in the first phase, or are we in the second phase, second wave? And I don't have an answer for that because I'm not personal. So if we're in the second wave, then I will have said Nigeria's response has been a good one. And we can comfortably say we are in the recovery stage. And I hope we're in the second phase so that we're not facing any more health challenges. We are in the recovery phase. The recovery is indicated by the performance of the Nigerian economy in the third quarter of 2020. It shows the movement of almost 2.48% from between one quarter and another. And that's the highest growth rate we've ever witnessed in the country today from all of these years, between one quarter and another. So that's a very good performance. The fact that we have gone into recession and it appears that we will really be coming out of it very quickly also confirms the fact that we are on the path to recovery. All the predictions that have been done, whether it's the World Bank or the IMF or National Bureau of Statistics, is that by 2021, Nigeria will be in a positive territory growth. So we are on the path of recovery. We do hope that within the medium term that we will get to that thriving state, because we want to attain a growth that is consistent and that is inclusive, not growth that is driven by revision in the crude oil price, but that some of our fundamentals have changed and that the macroeconomic stability has been achieved.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. My second question is that now at that very particular thriving stage, one other thing that Dr. Martins Davis mentioned is about industrial manufacturing and industrialization of Nigeria. So my question is, does the strategic, the new Agenda 2050, would that drive this industrial manufacturing that we have seen examples across a number of East Asian, Asia-Pacific economies? And do you think this will deliver that for Nigeria during the thriving phase? Are we laying the foundation right now under this recovery phase, and how?
So the beauty of the development plan we're working on now is that the majority of the participants are private sector participants. So their states are represented, local governments are represented, but so is the federal government. So it's truly a national plan that we're developing. We all agreed, without any exception, that Nigeria must industrialize. That it's only an industrialized nation that can achieve the kind of growth that we are aspiring to. So one of our targets is to become an industrialized nation in the next 4 to 5 years. So whatever we need to do to make sure that happens will now be detailed out in the implementation plan. And this plan is still work in progress. But we're all clear that we must face manufacturing. We must be able to support the small, medium enterprises, light industry, as well as heavy industry.
So, Honorable Finance, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, one question from my Q&A box is very simple. That's from Osinachuku Nwosu, and it says, thank you, Honorable Minister. My concern is how do we communicate the progress made so far and actions taken to the man on the street or the woman on the street, please?
Communication is very important. Unfortunately, we have not done as well as we need to in terms of communication. And we are doing a rethink and reset of our communication strategy. So beyond using the normal, traditional media, we've all, as heads of agencies, have had to start using alternative means of communication. In addition to that, we're also physically going out and calling attention to the projects that have been executed. There's a lot of work that has been done. But every time we have a public event, people are like, we don't know this thing. And so communications has been one of our weakest links, and we're working to make sure that that is mitigated and improved upon.
Honorable Minister, you just put it perfectly. You know, there's this young man and young lady, and both of them in the dark room, and the gentleman was winking at the lady. but she can't see him. So until there's light in the room, then they can both see each other. So let there be light.
And I can tell you that I believe in the power of the sunshine.
Thank you so much. I take that from Dr. Martin. Now I'm going to be a little bit unconventional. I'm going to ask a member of the Deloitte executive team to ask one question or two very quickly, at least one or two members of the executive team to ask a direct question of the Honorable Minister of Finance. Please, you can decide amongst yourself, but I'll go by alphabetical order of your surnames, if you allow me.
Bosun, if you do that, I will seize the initiative. The Honorable Minister knows that when I have the opportunity, I will jump in right ahead.
Your Miss, apologies. I was referring to you as Taiwo. Why did I call you Taiwo?
I know. How did you know that was going to be my question, Honorable Minister?
No, I have to preempt you now.
Taiwo is the first of a set of twins. So that's also
and he's not a twin.
So it's not a twin. So that would have gone to Arowolo, by the way. But Yomi, you have the floor.
So Honorable Minister answer my first question. So the other question is around the strategic revenue growth initiative. So you've alluded to it, the paucity of funds and the challenge that the country is facing, from a revenue standpoint. So we know we're making some progress on the first version, and we're grateful for the opportunity and the input that Deloitte had to make into that particular process. But like you did mention, I think it is time for us to then recalibrate that, because the first SRGI was done when we were just getting out of the recession of the last 4 or 5 years. So what's the plan? Because you touched briefly around that. So what's the plan and what's the timeline in terms of when you think we can be talking of 2.0 of SRGI?
So what we've done is we've just started a process to do a report on the performance of the SRGI. So it helps us to see what has worked and what has not worked. We've asked agencies to all turn in using the KPIs, their performance, and then we aggregate the report. Then we will now hold a consultative process to all collectively agree on how we can refine it. But I can tell you that we've already decided that we must add a thematic area that is centered around tax administration and tax compliance. We noticed during the period that revenue collecting agencies are busy measuring their performance on revenue collection rather than tax compliance. So we want to shift focus now to tax compliance, because when you achieve tax compliance, the revenue will follow it. And compliance is both on the side of the tax collector, but as well as the revenue agencies, compliance to their own laid down processes and procedures. So that's one of the new things that we want to add in the SRGI 2.0. But then it will be a collective process, and we will all have an agreement. And we will be reaching out to Deloitte to be part of that consultation.
Can I speak?
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you so much, Yomi and the Honorable Minister of Finance. Folani Fatai, you have the floor, please.
Okay, thank you very much, the Honorable Minister, for giving us this opportunity. We appreciate you being with us today. My question is what we discussed before. I've mentioned it before with you, and it's on VAT. But before I raise my question, I also request Bosley that after my question, let's allow Martin Davis to ask the question to the minister as well. So my question, the Honorable Minister, is, it's like you know, Nigerian VAT is one of the lowest, as agreed. But one topical point that is of importance is how do we improve and revolutionize input VAT system in Nigeria by taking it away from the current arrangement that provided a restricted input VAT claim arrangement. The point is around making our input VAT system to be in line and consistent with what you see all over the world. Even countries around us within the West Africa region have achieved this. And I think it's high time we start to look in and do detailed studies and look at it in detail, where we need to move away from what, in quotes, tend to work around a modified sales tax system to a more VAT structure that we see all over the world. The belief is that if we implement appropriate input VAT system in the way it is to be done, it will give a bit of more room that we cannot talk of balancing the increase in rate of VAT with the input VAT system. I mean, most countries are talking in double digits in terms of their VAT rate, but because they have a very right input VAT system, it allows them to make this adjustment. That would be my question. And like I mentioned in the past, we're still willing to work with you and the federal and the FRS to really put this in place so that it can be something we can do over a period. And then the input VAT system can really make a lot of revolutionary improvements in the Nigerian VAT system.
Well, thank you very much, Fatai. And true, you've been consistent from the design of the SRGI to date. But you see, what we've been trying to do is incremental changes. You know the nature of the Nigerian economy. If you do too many changes at a time, then it means you design to fail. So I wish we could have, in 2021, also do another round of changes or improvements on the VAT. We had to step back because we made a commitment, a general commitment that will not increase any taxes. So we didn't want to take any measure that would be interpreted to mean that we're increasing VAT. But we do have to improve on this VAT regime that we're currently improving. And when I say improve, it doesn't mean increase in the first place. And you're right. When taxpayers are able to recover VAT more easily, the increase in a new to a higher rate will be more acceptable. So we'll appreciate your support from you, because this is an area in which you are an expert. And already we did a consultation on the Finance Act Monday this week. We're already calling for inputs for Finance Act 2021. We hope that this one we will not have the crisis that we have had this year, and that we'll have a much longer period to actually consult and take inputs and make sure that a lot more people are carried along.
You have my commitment and the entire member of my team that will work with you on this.
Thank you very much.
It could be a journey of 2-3 years, but at least we can do it sort of progressively.
At least to do the studies, if you start by doing the studies, make the assessments, and then we start the changes on incremental basis, so to get to where we want to go.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Just a few more of your minutes, if we can just get that waiver from you, Honorable Minister, to take a bit more of your time under the existing protocols. Martin Davis, could you please turn on your microphone and your camera, and then engage the Honorable Minister for just about a minute on the key questions still being asked about industrialization, trade, and AFCFTA. So Davis, you and the Honorable Minister can banter this together, because the whole idea of Nigerian industrializing, some folks believe this will not happen in 1 or 2, 3 years, maybe 4 years down the line. So the question is, how do the progression between now and then, how does it happen, and what needs to happen? Martin, take that first, throw that to the Honorable Minister of Finance, please. It's your call.
Thank you very much. If I may just add to that, and just maybe very much a macro, longer term question or thought, provocative thought, Minister, if I may ask you. And it's not so much directed at your ministry as it is the Nigerian government. If we see the significant, almost incredulous rise of equity prices, particularly in green technology shares in the last 12 months, we seem to be at the beginnings of not so much a commodity super cycle, but a new energy tech super cycle. This looks to me almost an inflection turning point, and the markets are recognizing it of a decades to come trend. We will see similar dramatic shifts in coming months, I would think, out of the Biden administration around an entirely new energy strategy in the US. This does not bode well, arguably, for an oil-dependent economy or traditional means of powering our economies into the future. In light of this, if this thesis is correct, that we're at this inflection point of a long-term megatrend, what is the Nigerian government's thinking around, again, coming back to the point raised by the chair of diversification, considering the very real imperative to do so now because of what is this dramatic change that is taking place globally, that is not being caused but undoubtedly accelerated through this COVID-19 period. Minister, thank you.
Martin, thank you very much. The last time we met was in South Africa. We were developing the SRGI. And even then, you were calling attention to the existential threat of the oil industry. Any country in the world today that is not recognizing that the oil and gas industry is on the decline is putting the whole of its economy in jeopardy. So we do recognize that. We're currently working on revising the petroleum industry bill. And the purpose for us is to get whatever we can get and sweat the industry while we can. We're shifting focus to gas. And for us, gas will be to drive development in the Nigerian economy itself as a growth driver. We also are working on policies that have to do with greening the Nigerian economy. Nigeria has been one of the first movers, at least in the African continent, to float a green bond. So we go to the market, we actually go to the market to get financing for projects that are classified as green projects. And we've been doing that for a couple of years now. We want to be able to maximize the revenues that we can get from oil to develop the non-oil sector, to develop the green economy. We're working on fiscal policies that will encourage investors to come and invest in the Nigerian economy in solar power and other green initiatives within the country. We have a long way to go, and it's not going to be an easy journey for us. This over-dependence did not start today. We've started doing that by recalibrating our budgets to reduce the reliance on the oil revenues. And if you look at the Nigerian GDP, the contribution of the oil and gas industry has been on the decline. It's about, even before the crisis, it's 9%. So when you have an economy that is the size of the Nigerian economy and the contribution of one sector is 9%, it's really is not an economy that you will say is dependent on that economy. It is better to say that government revenues are dependent on oil, but the Nigerian economy is diversified as it is. The Nigerian economy is largely driven by activities of the private sector. And that's why somehow, despite all the crises, you still see a reasonable level of resilience, because government's contribution into the GDP is not up to 10, is roughly about 10%. The size of the government budget is so small compared to the size of the larger economy. For us, it's work in progress. We have joined the COP. We have designed our nationally determined indicators The Ministry of Environment is working on a process to review our achievement of those indicators, because there's a midterm review that is going on. We have not done as well as we had planned because we started late, and we're trying to now integrate the practice of getting MDAs to flag within their budget provisions that they have made to meet those indicators. So for us, we're making progress, even though it is small, but we're working in the right direction.
Well, thank you so much, Honorable Minister of Finance, and thank you, Martin, for that intervention. We appreciate that so much. I think at this point I would want us to quickly do the picture with the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, and I'm going to say to the technical team that we would want to align the Finance Minister and the entire management team of the executive management team of Deloitte first to take their group photograph with the Minister of Finance first. If you can just arrange the screen from the back end so that we can have the Minister of Finance and the rest of you in the gallery, and that would just be quick. We'll do that first, then we'll do that with the rest of the panelists. Let's have the members of the Deloitte Nigeria team first. And I would just include myself as a member of the executive team of Deloitte Nigeria for this purpose. Okay, now I got everybody smiling. Now we can take the family picture. Okay, thank you very much. I guess that is done. Okay, we could just rearrange the screen a little bit for the panelists. Ari, where are you? The IMF Country Director for Nigeria. Ari, I know you've been with us for the last 2-3 hours. Thank you so much. Ari, if you're around, please come back.
I'm here.
Ari,
I'm here.
Thank you. Please come back as well. Thank you. It's good to see you.
I've been listening very carefully.
It's getting close to lunchtime. We appreciate that. And where is the representative of the WHO? We would like to have you as well. Okay, now that we have Ari here, I'll let Ari later just speak to the Minister of Finance for just about a minute, and then we'll move on to the second panel. Very quickly, could we please arrange the screen to have Ari and other panel members who will be coming through in the afternoon. Tokwalade Nusi, Yemi Saka, Funke Opeke, if you're in the room, and Akimbanu, so if you're there, could you please join this family picture, please? Other panelists for the members of the panel for the first panel and the second panel, please. Okay, thank you very much. And on the final note, for everyone, members of participants, we are looking at about more than 600 on this particular call for now on the Zoom and others on YouTube. If you're on the part of the participants, you want to join the family picture, we now want to do the full gallery. Please turn on your videos and let's do this together. Another members of staff of Deloitte Nigeria, please let us smile to the camera. Please turn on your cameras, please. Yunus Abdullahi, thank you so much. Runke Kuye, we appreciate seeing you. Funke Okweke, main one. Okay, that's the main woman. Okay, let's put it there. Okay, thank you so much. Who else is joining us? Naiju, Sarah, Zainab. Who else wants to join?
Where is Linda?
Linda, Linda. The Honorable Minister is asking of you, please. Can you please show up?
Good afternoon. Good morning, Honorable Minister.
Hi, Linda. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
There you go.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
I want more of our female participants to please turn up. We've had too much more of the men in suits, men in black here. Even though some of them are in blue suits like Yemi Saka, Lede Nusi, and Bosin. I can see Bosin in blue suit as well. Okay. Okay, let's have a full screen. We need just about 3 or 4 more participants to please turn on their cameras, please. And then we'll just do this in a few seconds. Then we'll go to the second panel.
I can see Zainab IMF.
Oh, okay. Zainab Manga, where are you?
Yes.
Okay, well, yes.
Okay.
Okay, Zainab, where are you? Odutayo, thank you so much. Sheikh Usman, thank you so much. Femi Abigunde, thank you so much. Who else wants? Okay, here we go. Honorable Mr. Here she is.
Yes, I see her now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's good to have you. Okay, I think we can do the picture now from the technical team. Thank you very much. All smiles, please, everyone.
Oh.
Okay, here we go. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for that. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to allow the IMF Country Director for Nigeria, Ari Ising, to ask a question of the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Ari, you have the floor for about a minute or two to engage the minister, please.
Actually, thank you very much. I actually have no questions. I was paying very close attention on this issue of reform on the tax environment. The IMF and the Ministry of Finances are very well aligned. We engage very often. We are supportive of the strategy, and our experts in the Fiscal Affairs Department engage with the ministry often, and we hope to continue interacting and supporting the ministry as much as possible in building capacities. And we are a very close partner of Nigeria and the Ministry of Finance in this important reform that the ministry is leading. So this is my comment. I don't have questions. I just have wishes and desire to partner with Nigeria and the ministry on its important reforms. Thank you.
Thank you, Ari.
Thank you. If I may, moderator, let me just confirm that we are working very closely with the IMF. We asked them for specific technical support on some of our physical issues. So we have support from the IMF in improving tax administration, customs administration, as well as compliance in those two major revenue generating agencies. They have supported us with an assessment mission. We've agreed on a couple of priority focus areas, which we're now beginning to roll out, and we are going to integrate those areas into the SRGI 2.0, and we will have continuous support from them in terms of trying to reach the KPIs that will be set.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister of Finance.
So thanks to IMF for the support, for the technical support.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister for Finance, Budget and National Planning. We appreciate your time so much. It's been a time well spent with you. We appreciate you being our special guest on this Deloitte Nigeria Economic Outlook to 2021. We thank you so much for your time, for staying with us for this time, and all our participants. We want to go straight now, and Minister of Finance, stand around, stick around.
Thank you. No, I want to ask for your permission to fall out. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much on behalf of Deloitte Nigeria, the executive team, on behalf of the entire Deloitte team, not just in Nigeria, but around the world, in West Africa specifically, and on behalf of the Managing Director. May I quickly just allow, Folarin, if you are there, would you please give the Honorable Minister a parting shot, please, quickly, as the CEO of Deloitte West Africa, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bosin. The Honorable Minister, we appreciate you for being part of this session today. We really appreciate you. You've been very humble and generous to us for attending past economic outlook that we've held. And you're also here today virtually with us. We appreciate you. We know your time is not easy to get you down to be part of this session, but you created the time for us. We really appreciate you, and we thank you so much. On behalf of Deloitte globally and Deloitte Nigeria, we so much appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fukai. Thank you to everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you very much. We'll just move on very quickly, and I'm going to invite one of the partners and West Africa consulting leader with Deloitte Nigeria, Yemi Saka, to take us through to the second panel and the final part of today's event, and that is digital infrastructure and the changing business landscape. And I love this panel because it's a whole lot more female sensitive. So please, women, take over. Main one, please be the main one. Ronke, please, let's ride this forward. It's your show. Thank you, everyone. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Bosin. Thank you very much, Bosin, for the introduction. And as you alluded to, the topic is on digital infrastructure and changing business landscape. I think we can all agree that the pandemic has impacted every aspect of our society, education, the ways we work, and just our individual daily routines. The world, including the business communities, have redefined and in some ways are in the process of redefining a new and unprecedented normal, where change is exceedingly rapid. I think you also agree that there's an imperative to respond, to recover, and to eventually thrive again. So over the next 40 minutes or so, we'll engage in stimulating conversation with our distinguished panel, which is being displayed on the screen here. So just a quick round on introduction. Thank you so much, Funke. Funke Ekweke is the CEO of Main One, a leading provider of world-class services, network, internet solutions, voice, etc., across West Africa. We also have Akin Banuso, Country General Manager of Microsoft Nigeria, a global company which is pretty much a household name to everyone. Thank you again to the other panelists. We have Mrs. Kwe. Thank you, Ronke. Ronke is the CEO of Shared Agent Network Expansion Facility, also known as SANEF, with the goal of accelerating financial inclusion in Nigeria. And finally, my fellow partner, Tope Aladinusi, with our West Africa Cyber Services leader and a partner at Deloitte. So given the importance of connectivity, resilience, and the dependency on communication and infrastructure, some would even say that if you reflect back at 2020, 2020 may have been the year of the greatest digital transformation in history, with most of the world's population adopting to digital interactions for personal as well as work. So Funke, if you don't mind, let me start with you. So the telecommunication industry, specifically the broadband and ISPs, have been the focus of the change in work and lifestyle as a result of the pandemic. So given the immense pressure, are we likely to see increased investment in infrastructure? And what challenges do you foresee?
Thank you very much. Really delighted to be here and an honor to speak with all your guests this morning still. On the issue of investment in telecom and indeed the wave of digital transformation informed by the pandemic, translating first into pressure on our networks and infrastructure, and then, as you said, the investment, given that we already had significant infrastructure deficits prior to the pandemic. Unfortunately, we have not seen the level of investment to close that gap. And I would probably say the gap between demand and infrastructure and services that we have is probably broadening. What we're seeing is, of course, continued investment, and I would say selective investment to the haves, those who are already in the formal economy, those who have the means to purchase more of what they already had and enjoyed to make their lives more functional, even if the quality of services do not really match expectation. Now we continue to have that gap, of course, because of weak investment. But in terms of broader access to services and improvement for the masses overall, and bringing more people into that net, for example, to deliver services, be it education or healthcare. We haven't seen, I think consistent with what we're seeing in the rest of the economy, we haven't seen that wave of increased investment. Why is that? One, the macroeconomics make it very difficult. Investors are just that, seeking to make money on their investment. And I think we're seeing the same thing with slowing foreign direct investment into the economy. So investments have not really grown in line with the explosion in demand that we've seen in the sector. We just see investment being redirected and some small levels of investment to ease pressures. So that's the investment story in telecom for now.
Thank you so much, Funke. I think your points are quite apt. I think it nicely links, into how the enablement industry is critical to the change in business landscape. I know you've talked about investment. So let me quickly jump to Aki. So Aki, the nexus between technology and the future of work globally has been apparent, throughout the pandemic period. So what parallels can we draw from this as it relates to the role technology can play to drive economic recovery, specifically in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. Good morning still, everyone. I think there's no need to repeat it. The fact that we're having this event via video technology, it would be exhibit one, right? I think it was early mid last year that my CEO, Satya Nadella, made a comment saying that what we're seeing globally is 2 years worth of digital transformation already happening in the first 2 months of the pandemic. And that hasn't been, it hasn't passed by Nigeria. If you look to the recent past, what we've seen very clearly has been, even the government, even in healthcare, people are being forced to start adopting digitization. The parallels that I would now see from that and how it will drive the economic recovery is that we need to seize the opportunity, seize the moment now by really looking at what are the things that underpin a strong economy. We need healthcare, financial services, education. Those key things, we're already forced to start digitizing them. And it's back to Funke's point, right? It's about having the infrastructure there and having investments in those core infrastructure. And I think as we move forward, it's now become not an option. It has to be done. So you will see as we move along a lot more partnerships, and you will see organizations like ours partnering with the government, partnering with the main ones, partnering generally to not just to provide connectivity, but actually to provide digital services into remote locations to our children, to government locations, to be able to give us primary healthcare. I keep going back to healthcare because it's very clear, there's a direct correlation between the fact that, and this is global, not just Nigeria, that the poorest people in the world or even middle-class people are just a major health event away from being bankrupt. So if I'm busy worrying about the healthcare of my loved ones, I can't be as effective as I should be. And then we talk to education. Education is that other thing which you will find that now, the next brain drain is Canada, right? A lot of the young people are going to Canada because there are opportunities, right? And the same thing goes for education. People are going as far out as Ghana. And the point of education here is that we need research in Nigeria. We need to use the natural resource that we have that's best for us, which is that intellectual ability that Nigerians have to think through and figure out the problems that we have and fixing those problems for us. And that's what's going to take us and drive the economy forward. We're already seeing young people doing this in agri-tech, in healthcare, and I just want to say that it's about also all coming together now, and I see it coming.
Thank you very much, Aki. Thank you very much. I mean, I agree with your views. I think what is clear, and I think clear to us is how technology is pivotal, is a pivotal part of the economic recovery and growth. Now, with our population size and sort of the desire to truly have a captive market, the challenges around inclusion is a key aspect of this conversation. And I think I saw a question in our chat room much earlier when we had the first panel that was alluding to this. So if I can direct this question to Ronke. So, by the way, great job your team is doing from a SANEF perspective. But in your opinion and from your perspective, what role, Ronke, can financial inclusion play in the growth of an economy, especially within the context of what we're talking about, this whole changing landscape, the advent of digital being more pervasive? What exactly is the role of financial inclusion?
Hi, thank you. Good morning, or good afternoon, actually. In terms of financial inclusion, I'll basically just define what financial inclusion is for everybody to know. It's really the ability to make financial products and services accessible, easily accessible, affordable to all individuals and all companies, regardless of their class or the size of the company. That's just basically what it is. And there's some things that need to be done for that to happen. And clearly, when you do those things, they are responsible for the economic growth that we have today, or that we will, or we're anticipating to have. And one of this is for all to have access to financial products and services. And when I say financial products and services, I'm talking about ability for everybody to be able to save. First of all, to even have a bank account or a wallet, an ability to be able to save, ability for them to have access to credit, either through the fintechs or through the banks or through any formal process. Also, micro pensions is very key as well, and micro insurance, which could be in form of health, life insurance, and things like that. And also, they should be able to make payments easily, which is via transfers, or even going through agency banking to deposit money or to make withdrawals from them. And by doing all this, I mean, that really should lead to some form of economic growth that we expect. Also, job opportunities are provided by doing this through income growth, employment, empowerment of the people can be used as well. Also, poverty reduction reduces the income disparity. It also, financial institutions are able to cater for the rural areas through agency banking, especially where there are no bank branches. In addition, I mean, if somebody who doesn't have a bank account, for example, will find it very, very difficult to save. The social impact cannot be ignored, the positive social impact as well, from security of putting their monies in a safe place, and also access to credit, which would expand for petty traders, expand businesses, which would have positive ripple effect in the economy as well. So those are the things I could think about immediately that financial inclusion can provide in developing the economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronke. I think you're spot on. Looking forward to deepening the conversation specifically around financial inclusion. I personally think financial inclusion is quite critical to the whole Thrive story. So after we recover, and we obviously will need to thrive, and I think financial inclusion has a very significant role to play there. So I know my partner Tokwe is fired up to share his view around the trust aspect. So we've talked about the changing landscape, we've talked about digital infrastructure. So Tokwe, what has the pandemic taught us regarding cybersecurity, and what events do we expect will happen in Nigeria given the prevailing trends in social, economic, and political events around the world? So how does that, and how would that impact us from a cybersecurity perspective?
Thank you very much, Yemi, and it's such a privilege to be here. The pandemic has taught us lots of things regarding cybersecurity, and the first is that cybersecurity is no longer a nice to have. It has now become a need to have practice. Every person and company needs cybersecurity to survive. I know that looks like a very sweeping statement, but time will prove it that every person and every company needs cybersecurity to survive. And the reason is very simple. We call it the new normal. And this new normal is largely a cyber normal. Our businesses are now largely online. Even our conversations, look at this conference, is done online. Businesses are making critical decisions and sharing confidential information online. We have our board meetings online. We have our management meetings online. Even our transactions, they are largely done in cyberspace nowadays. And not just that, our children, imagine children of five-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 7-year-olds, all exposed to cyberspace. And what that means is that we even have cyber criminals who are targeting these children with things like child pornography, pushing it at them. And children are seeing things that even adults that are on this conference have not seen before. Now, this is the kind of challenge that companies are facing, that businesses are facing, and that even people are facing in Nigeria. And just like Akin mentioned, what we call the future has now become the present. We saw some of these things coming, and we said that it will happen in 2 to 5 years, but that has happened within months. And so we now need to rethink the way we do things. We need to protect ourselves, we need to protect our children and our organization in this new normal, which is largely a cyber normal. We need to rethink the way we manage risk and also protect ourselves, our data, our money in the cyber normal. Even with remote working, for example, there is heavy dependence right now on remote working. I'm sure some of our panelists are maybe calling from their homes. Now, all these things will force every one of us to embrace cybersecurity. And we always say in our team, there is a case of evolve or dissolve. Those who do not evolve to appreciate the impact of cybersecurity in the new normal, they will end up dying as the years goes by. So based on these trends in Nigeria and the world, what have we seen? What do we see happening? And what should we expect? Just to tie to your question. The first I would say is that what we are known, what we're familiar with in Nigeria regarding the business email compromise, we should expect to see more of that. Where people send phishing emails and they're trying to, lure people to do the wrong things or to divulge their confidential information or to take over their transactions and the rest of them. Now we're seeing it in more sophisticated format, and we expect it to continue. For instance, in the past, what happened is that they try to attack our customers and they get into their emails and try to do business. But these days, the bad guys are attacking both ends. They attack the customer and the supplier. They attack you and your business partner. So they take control of the conversation. They have access to your email. They have access to their own email. And they set the email in such a way that every information you exchange is being sent to them in a very stealth mode. And with that, they take control of the conversation. When it's time to exchange maybe invoice, they give you another invoice, another bank account details. And before you know what's happening, millions of naira are being lost. And we're having that repeatedly in increasing number nowadays. And so we need to prepare for such things. Also, we should expect to see a rise in deepfakes. We always have the Nigeria Cybersecurity Outlook, which we release every year, and we just released the data of 2021. You could Google it online and you find it, Cybersecurity Outlook 2021. One of the things we expect to see is rise in deepfakes. Now there are tools that you can use to clone people's voice, clone their video, make them feel as though they said something they never said. And so this is going to pose a very dangerous risk, to the economy. Imagine if your CEO had an address to the staff and everything looked like your CEO. People will believe it. Now, this is becoming very rampant. And that's why we need to be very careful the kind of things that we share. And just before I wrap up this, I want to say we should also expect to see more cyber criminals. Now, why do I say so? As at December 2020, Nigeria ranked second largest Bitcoin trader in the world. Nigeria, second largest Bitcoin trader in the world. Now, what you need to trade Bitcoin is similar to what you need to perpetrate cybercrime. Now, I'm not saying Bitcoin is crime. I'm just trying to relate the two together, that if we can be so heavy in that area, we can also be heavy in this area. You need internet access, you need laptop, and And once you can get some few trainings, you see people are now going into this. And because of the economic impact of COVID-19, many people have lost their jobs. There is we've started to see the effect already in the economy. There is increase in kidnapping, wanton killing. The other leg is in the cybercrime. That's just one leg of it. In account they say debit and credit. The other leg is in cyberspace. We are also seeing increased influx of cyber criminals, and we believe that this should concern us as businesses as we prepare for the new normal and the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tope. I think as the world changes, the shift in mindset into digital will continue to deepen. I think we can all appreciate the need for the prioritization of cybersecurity. So Funke, let me come back to you. So as Akin, Ronke, and Tope have all touched on aspects of the fourth industrial revolution, what are the technology infrastructure requirements for Nigeria to drive economic growth in the fourth industrial revolution? And I guess what role is the private sector playing to close the technology gaps, technology infrastructure gaps?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I mean, and indeed, it is an infrastructure play, because I think underlying everything that was said by our other panelists is the need for infrastructure to drive those services, be it delivery of cloud services or building agent networks or ensuring adequate cybersecurity protections for people who are accessing information or transactions or participating in one activity or the other online. I'll take a tangent and say, just before we went into lockdown, we had the privilege of the president launching the Nigerian National Broadband Plan, which your team worked with us on to deliver what I thought a plan truly that anticipated the current circumstances we have, but also the need for Nigeria to catch up in terms of our network readiness, infrastructure readiness to participate in the fourth industrial revolution. So there were a lot of targets set in that plan, both for reach and also for quality and speed and performance, and also for participation of citizenry in accessing information online, or the digital revolution, if you want to call it. When I look at that, part of it is we're mobile first economy, so expanding the reach of 4G services to more of our population. And if there's one area where the investments in our industry have been targeted since the pandemic, I would say that is probably the one area with MNOs expanding their 4G footprint. However, there are other critical areas, and what that does is, of course, you have access for the last mile, but then how capable are the networks to move that data and deliver the performance and deliver the speeds? And so there was a lot of the specific targets set for fiber deployment to every local government, to more of our schools and health facilities and government agencies across the country, and also fiber to the towers, where we continue to lag when compared with other countries in Africa, and definitely on a global scale. If you're going to have 4G, not to talk about 5G, which is being deployed in advanced markets, you need to be able to move high volumes of traffic, and we can't even move the 4G traffic effectively yet. So we still have some gaps in this area. There have been some pronouncements, but not sufficiently well coordinated and not well lined up with market realities to actually accelerate the deployment of fiber that is required to bring more people in. Also, additional investment in towers, because you need more densification of our networks across all of our metro areas, issues of getting permits and being able to drive that, issues of power availability and the high cost of power still remain an issue. And of course, demand drivers with adoption of e-government and government initiatives to really bring people into the fold. So be it e-education or e-healthcare, and some of these services, which will also stimulate usage and the demand side of the equation. So those are the requirements. Some things are being done, but clearly still a very long way to go.
Thank you, Funke. Very great insights. I do agree with you in terms of what some of those requirements are. I know you also touched on the National Broadband Plan, which I think is a very interesting read. I encourage our participants and attendees to essentially seek out that report. I know it's published. Akin, if you don't mind, I'll come back to you quickly. The ICT sector has contributed approximately about 9.6% to GDP in 2019, about 10.4% or so in Q3 of 2020. It will be helpful to have your views on how far we've come with regards to technology over the past 10 years, especially when you compare our current adoption of technology to other mature markets. So if we can have your view, I think would be make for an interesting conversation.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Yemi. It's a very interesting question. And the way I would answer it is that on the one hand, we have made tremendous progress, especially in the private sector. In fact, specifically in FSI and telco, right? So the mobile penetration, the mobile density in Nigeria is probably higher than in a lot of other areas that would be comparable, much higher. However, on the other hand, we have not made any progress at all. And in this area, it would really be in the terms of citizen services. So in the public sector, the services have been poor. So whereas in telco or in FSI, you'll see that we're already leveraging technologies such as artificial intelligence, cloud, blockchain. You know, someone spoke about blockchain just now, spoke about Bitcoin. You know, so in finance, we've made a lot of progress. However, you cannot have what I would call an economy that is schizophrenic, because that's what it is. It's kind of unbalanced. So on the public side, we're lagging so far behind that the governments are unable to keep up and catch up. So when the pandemic hit, for example, you would realize that in the West and around many places, people were trying to sort of ease, give palliatives to the citizenry or target certain relief measures. It was very difficult for our governments to do the same. And the reason we're unable to do it is because we haven't digitized. We don't have we don't have the records at the 3 levels of government. We don't have, the systems that allow us to very quickly and easily target relief measures. So exactly to the same things that Funke and the other panelists were talking about, we need e-government services. So even in what we do on a daily basis, why should someone need to go and queue up at a government office and pay lawyers to search for files for weeks just because they want to check the title on a piece of land or any other piece of information? These are things that really at this point we should have digitized. Even during the lockdown, there was an unfortunate incident where High Court got burnt down in Lagos, right? Igboshere High Court. A lot of documents that didn't have copies elsewhere got lost in the fire, right? These are things that we should have been able to have archived, and we should be able to then move those things forward. So when I say it's schizophrenic, I say you can see that we're already far ahead in some areas, especially in the banking and in telco, but where in the other parts of normal life, it's far behind. And that gives you pause, cause for pause. And it means that we really need to start being more intentional about, creating an environment that supports, a national strategy. And this has to be, again, a partnership between the public and the private sector. So, to the whole thing, you can see the pieces coming together. You can see people talking about the national identity card. You can see people talking about the BVN. You're wondering, okay, if you've captured my details for a passport, and you've captured my details for a BVN, and you've captured my details for a NIMC card and for a driver's license, why do I need to keep doing it in different places? So this is where, to my mind, we need to have this national strategy. We need to sit back and think and bring all the stakeholders together and say, what do we need to be doing here, rather than having all these piecemeal initiatives that we do. They're good, but they become overly expensive. And Nigeria really isn't a rich nation. No matter what, we're not rich. It's not a rich nation. We need to be prudent in how we do. So my simple answer to your question is, over the past 10 years, we've made a lot of progress in some areas, with a caveat. But over the last 10 years as well, we haven't made any progress in other areas that are equally as important.
As you said, Aki, we are far ahead in some areas. I think my view has always been that we tend to leapfrog quite well when it comes to technology, but I do agree with you. I think we need to accelerate in other areas that we are clearly lagging behind. Many thanks for your view. So I guess, Ronke, based on Aki's prior points and the obvious economic gap, clearly it's real, right? It's a real challenge. So what contributions in the area of policy drive has SANEF made towards closing some of these gaps in the Nigerian economic divide, especially in the much needed area of financial?
Thank you for that. Well, we're about 2 years old now, in 2019, where we focused on mainly, or where we were also, because SANEF was set up by CBN and the banks in Nigeria. And what we were meant to focus on, and what we did, was to focus mainly on agent banking to promote financial inclusion. I mean, we do know that banks are not, in a lot of bank branches are not in a lot of places. So that's what we've done. And technology has been very, very key to us, in order to be able to do anything. Really, without technology and without some, bit of infrastructure that we have, we probably wouldn't have been able to do anything. Of course, the technology we have from banking, from telecom sector has helped. One of the things that we've done, first of all, is to create today we have 585,000 agents across Nigeria, across all the 6 geopolitical zones. What we were meant to have is about 500,000 by the end of 2020, which is what we were telling everyone. But today we're about 585,000. And these agent locations are in all the 774 local government areas. We were also able to do transactions last year of about 405 million volume of transactions, valued at about 7.8 trillion in terms of value. So these are things that we've done outside of the bank branches. We've been able to do them outside with the help of our super agents and the mobile money operators. And in SANEF, we don't go out there to get agents ourselves. We work through, we're a collaborating company. So we're an enabler to the money operators, the agents, the super agents. One of what we've also done is we've used technology to be able to ensure that people are able to open accounts all over Nigeria. So we've got all the banks platform, which is our partner, need enabled today. So we have all the super agents and the MMOs connected, and also the banks connected to the same platform. So we're able to open accounts for all the agents are able to open accounts for anyone at any location or any of their choice. Another thing we've done is the ability to provide financial literacy. Spent the last, especially the first year, going around the
Okay, so I think Ronke might be having some technical challenges.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, Ronke, we can hear you now. We can hear you now. Thank you.
I'll just quickly get thrown out again.
No problem.
We've been able to provide financial literacy. You know, the first year we were traveling all around, you know, training the agents, making sure people know about the essence of opening accounts, the essence of opening wallets, the essence of coming into the financial sector, the formal financial sector, and also trying to onboard agents. And we did this in collaboration with our partners like EFINA and various other organizations who are promoting financial inclusion as well, including the police, including CBN, the regulators, the banks, the agents. And what we've also done is to promote trust in this, so that anywhere they see the SANEF agents, they would go in there to transact. So we've been able to brand all the locations and also issue certificates of trust, so that when people see that, they can go there. Collaboration is very key to us, like I mentioned before. So it's very important for us to bring everyone working in silos to work together to promote financial inclusion. And that we've been able to do in terms of the regulators, like I said, the law enforcement, and so on and so forth. Policy recommendation is very important, the sustainability of the agents. If the agent's business is not, agent banking business is not sustainable, we find them dropping on the wayside, by the wayside. So we work closely with Central Bank of Nigeria in ensuring that we have favorable environment for them to operate in, and also the customers as well, the consumers, to be able to make sure that they're not overcharged in carrying out their banking transactions. Or, I wouldn't say that SANEF has done it alone. I would say that we've had, where the enabling company, we brought quite a number of people together, quite a number of segments together to be able to move financial inclusion forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronke. I think truly insightful points. I believe we can all collectively agree that the drive towards financial inclusion is critical towards the maturity of our business landscape. Okay, so last set of questions, which I will welcome our panelists to provide insight. So on the need for government to create the enabling environment for technology, digital, and supporting infrastructure, how can this be best done? I mean, so is there a possibility for public-private partnerships? So maybe let me go to Funke, and then if Aki is still on, Aki, Ronke, and then finally get up with. So Funke, maybe just talk to us a little bit about potential public-private partnership with regards to the enabling environment.
No, thank you very much. I'll take off. Aki, I think, started talking about that. Absolutely, one, I believe public-private partnerships are required, but perhaps not even public-private partnerships. I think it's just private investment, as has happened in most of the parts of the world, that's driving the investment in technology and the adoption of technology. What government needs to do is stimulate demand and leverage what's being done to achieve their own objectives. But I totally agree that we're not a rich economy. And so if we are going to achieve the productivity improvements that we need and the level of penetration in terms of digital access for the citizenry, we're going to have to do it more efficiently than we have been doing. And what I see is that 20%, I would call it, for a lot of these programs that we have, you quickly reach a critical mass of about 40 million Nigerians who registered. You know, the 40 million in BBN, the 40 million who quickly gotten their names registered. And how about the others? Yet, we know that the mobile networks, for example, who have SIM card registrations, reach a lot more people. I think we're starting to see governments trying to tap into those networks, those infrastructure, the service reach and the capacity of the private sector to get things done. And I think we're going to have to see more of that, where government is really a demand vehicle and enabler in providing the right incentives. But if we're going to close the gaps, to be honest, we all heard the Minister of Finance, government does not have the income and the means or the capacity to make those investments or to make parallel investments. And I think we will get to our destination faster if we were focused on creating and implementing. I think there are lots of policies and strategies, implementing that strategy, government looking to private sector to help achieve the results and create the incentives and the enabling environment for them to achieve that. And it needs to be end to end. A lot of times there are specific initiatives. If one state reduces right of way, if I'm trying to build a nationwide network, it's very difficult for me to go fully deploy in one state in the middle of the country. The people, citizens of that state, want to talk to people all over the world. They want to access the internet. Building within that state does not give me, as a service provider, a viable business model. It provides relief for that state only. And so we really need to look at some of these strategies and how they work for the private sector. And I think that's the role of government, more so than trying to build their own networks or parallel infrastructure to deliver services to the people or enable citizens in the digital world.
Thank you so much, Funke. Thank you very much. Can I call on any of the other panel members to just make a quick closing remark on that question? So Ronke or Tokwe or Aki.
Sure. I think for me, I think we're broadly agreed. I think the role of government really is in creating an enabling environment. So creating policy and ensuring that the right investment can come in. Private-public partnership has already been proven to work because the public sector has expertise in certain areas. However, we also need the government to drive, to be the catalyst and to drive, that digital adoption, right? So if you want to drive education and digitization in education, whilst you have the top schools already adopting e-education, electronic education and other means, you're only reaching a very small population. And guess what? The real impact for education is in public schools, right? Because that's where the bulk of the students are. So if we want to make a real difference, we're going to have to go hand in hand, private sector and the public sector, the government working together to find solutions for the bulk of Nigerians. And those solutions will not come from one side or the other alone. There needs to be really deep partnership. So public-private partnership is key. The way I see it is that we need to democratize digital technology. We need to democratize it. We need to make sure that it's available to all. So any way in which we can do it, sometimes it may well be that a private company is not able to do it alone, or it's not financially viable, in which case the government needs to step in and create policies or incentives in partnering with them to ensure that it makes sense from a business perspective. Because if I'm investing in something, obviously I want to get some return. So in that sense, it's very important that we start to look at these things holistically. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Akin. I think we all have a shared responsibility. Your points are quite apt. That brings us to the end of our second panel. Thank you very much to the audience for all their questions throughout the day. We'll certainly work with our production team to send responses to questions that we weren't in a position to answer given the time crunch. So panel members, thank you very much. Your inputs, your perspectives have been instrumental in raising more awareness to our changing business landscape. So let me turn this over to our esteemed MC Bosin. I am passing the mic back to you officially. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yemi Saka. We appreciate you and your team, how you've managed that presentation period for the second panel on the digital infrastructure and the changing business landscape, bringing the whole infrastructure, digital technology into the entire conversation. And I think this is just what you can call the engine of the growth that we spoke about earlier in a part of the program regarding industrial manufacturing, whether we're paying taxes, whether we're trying to harvest more taxpayers, we're trying to make the system a whole lot more effective and efficient moving forward in terms of e-government, e-education, e-health, and all of that. We appreciate that. Thank you. Here at Deloitte Nigeria. Thank you so much, Ronke Kuye. We appreciate bringing in the private sector perspective. And of course, Funke Opeke, thank you very much for Main One. Yes, quite a whole lot more that needs to be done with the private sector, not just the government, making sure that, yes, we roll out not just 4G, 5G, the last mile, the way, in the manner of speaking with logistics. How do we reach the last mile in terms of digital infrastructure and democratizing digital space in Nigeria is a whole lot of democratization. I think it has become more of a human right rather than just being a service or something that we just need to have. I think it's become a human right that you provide technology and digital technology infrastructure to every citizen of your country. I think that should be, perhaps the United Nations should just enshrine that as part of a human rights bill, that yes, you have the right not just to provide power, education, water, digital infrastructure should become one of them. I'm sure you agree, Mrs. Opeke, that should be a human right.
Absolutely, it's already one of the SDGs, and I think in some countries it is enshrined as a human right.
I think we should pass that to the National Assembly. Mrs. Opeke and Ronke, two of you should please mobilize that, get Yemi Saka to be part of the team. And I didn't say, and you guys can move a motion to the National Assembly to make it as part of what we need in Nigeria. I think it will accelerate a whole lot of things. It will even help the National Assembly and everybody get a whole lot more. The whole judiciary, the whole everything, the structure that we're talking about, we need this. Thank you so much for this very important panel. Thank you, Yemi. We can't thank you enough. But of course, I need to piggyback a little bit and thank the first panel and the panelists for brought out. But one of the most important part of this, or what the finance minister said, what Martin Davis did in his presentation, very brilliant, the 3 pillars and all the structures within what we need to do. And Ari from the IMF, the country director for Nigeria, Ari Eisen, thank you so much. We appreciate your bringing those thoughts and the partnership that is going on, the handshake at the fiscal level between the Nigerian authorities and the IMF that the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning alluded to in our remarks as well. Then, of course, all the way to our participants. And like Yemi Saka just said, there's a whole lot of questions. I'm looking at nearly 50 questions and comments. And I think this has been very robust in terms of you participants, hundreds of you who have been part of this Deloitte Nigeria Economic Outlook for 2021. It speaks to how much we all want Nigeria to develop, and your contributions will be taken on. Of course, you can depend on Deloitte Nigeria to harvest your thoughts. An leading advisory firm, the leader in the industry, to put this together and use it to engage not just the government, the private sector as well, and part of the advisory services that is rendered across the whole spectrum of the economy here at Deloitte Nigeria. So your thoughts, your comments and questions are not going to waste. Definitely the team, Yomi and the rest of them, they're already at the back end harvesting all of that, putting that together now as part of the paperwork that will go into critical thinking and decision-making processes, not to advisory for everyone. At this point, let me hand over to Femi Abegunde, who is a partner deputy chairman of Africa Board for Deloitte, to bring this conference to a formal close by saying, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bosun, and it's been a very exciting day. On behalf of Deloitte, we are particularly grateful to the minister for honoring us. As usual, anytime we call upon her, she's there, and she did a good job. We also want to thank our external panelists, right? Ari Asen, Dr. Walker, Funke, Ronke Kuye, Anaki. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your contribution. We like the intellectual discourse that's generated. And as Bosun said, we're going to be, putting some of these things together for, future work. Martin Davis, as usual, I think your presentation was well received and a little bit thought-provoking in certain areas and things that we know in Nigeria, which we need to do. This diversification has been said many times, but we have not done anything. Now somebody from outside is also pointing it to us. We have work to do for sure. I would also like to say a big thank you to you, Bosin, as our MC coordinator. You did a great job. And my partners, Fatah, Yomi Sheye, Yemi Tope, and many others, that have not come on screen. Thank you for your work. Clients, colleagues who have attended this, I think we're grateful. We're thankful to you. 700 participants on Zoom and many others on YouTube. I think this is very wonderful. Thank you for your attention. My colleagues at the back end of things, those of you who have made these things to work well, I think a word of thanks must go to you as well. And overall, gentlemen of the press and people listening from all over the world, it's great to have had a day with you, and we look forward to you next year. Hopefully, Corona would have left us, and we will be meeting in person. Thank you very much, and God bless. Bye.
Thank you so much, Femi Abegunde, Deputy Chairman, Deloitte Africa and Leader, Energy and Resources Industry for Deloitte West Africa. Now, this is my final words for this particular conference. And one of the participants raised a very important point, which has been raised 1,000 times. This is not just a talking shop. Now, if you look at some of the improvements that has been made by the government in terms of bringing the Finance Act into being and the whole spectrum of what is being done, some of these points or these actions that we see on the side of the government, rather very gentle, could be like baby steps, but they're all part of the results of this engagement, like what you have like Deloitte Nigeria Economic Outlook over the years. So this is not just a talking shop that just go to waste. The government will take this away. The engagement of organizations like Deloitte Nigeria in engaging government and private sector at all levels is a testimony to the fact that yes, these various engagements, economic outlook conference and summits are having impacts on the government thinking and action. So we should all be on this positive trajectory that look, this would also impact what is moving on. 5-10 years ago, there was nothing like Finance Act in Nigeria. Now we're having that in place. Now that means that we're making some steps. Who would ever believe that a time would be in Nigeria that the government would think about reducing tax at any point? 10-15 years ago is a pipe dream. Today it has happened. And it will be a whole lot more working together. And the fact that we even have government officials engaging publicly and making notes and working with the private sector like Deloitte Nigeria in advisory capacity with a whole lot more people, I think we're already making some economic and progress moving forward. Thank you, everyone. It's been a great pleasure and honor on my part to be part of this. Thank you so much for the Deloitte Nigeria team. We thank you for all the hard work all of you have done at the back end to make this possible for the 2021 edition of Deloitte Nigeria Economic Outlook. I wish you all the best of the day and the rest of the week. I am Bosin Amofaye, and I say thank you very much once again. I'll leave you with these videos of Deloitte Nigeria. You just want to enjoy it while we say goodbye to all of you. And thank you once again. Don't forget, you will receive, all of you who are registered participants, you'll get all the presentations in your email today. And that I can promise you as well from the Deloitte team. And of course, for the video, it will be available on YouTube at the end of today, so you can watch any part of it all over again. And that is also from us. Thank you so much and have a great day, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Welcome to Deloitte Global's TNT predictions for 2021. We are in the midst of dramatic shifts. Even though the SARS coronavirus 2 is only 100 nanometers across, it has catalyzed big changes that will continue to affect the way we work and live. The story of 2021 will be driven by finding the right balance between humans and technology, society, and the economy. These are Deloitte's 9 predictions for 2021. Number 1. Edge computing and intelligence bring the potential for faster, less expensive, and more secure operations in everything from autonomous vehicles to virtual reality to the Internet of Things. The world appears to be on track to a fourth industrial revolution. Number 2, cloud migration. Moving to the cloud is not only helping organizations deal with the pandemic, it is also positioning them to thrive beyond it. The growth of cloud services is likely to continue in 2021 and beyond. Number 3, in times of uncertainty, conspiracy theories abound. Concerns about 5G's health risks are widespread, but we expect that the use of 5G will continue to prove safe. Education needs to be consistent, and it needs to begin now. Number 4, meet the next generation radio access network, also known as Open RAN. We predict that more than 80% of core wireless network deployments will be virtualized by 2023, and Open RAN has the potential to revolutionize the telecom industry. Number 5, the gender gap in sports revenue is beginning to close. It will take time, but the industry must continue to invest in opportunities for women's sports in order to capitalize on the revenue potential. Look for record-breaking attendance and viewership as the upward trend continues. Number 6, the hyper-quantified athlete. Data is fundamentally changing sports. Look for this explosion of athlete data to raise new questions about how best to use it and how to do so ethically. Number 7, sales of 8K TVs are likely to reach US $3.3 billion in 2021. It's not just about entertainment. 8K TVs will also be used for gaming, work, and commercial purposes. Number 8, COVID-19 protocols have given digital reality headsets an opportunity to prove their usefulness in the enterprise and in education. We're projecting that unit sales of virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality headsets will double over 2019 levels. Number 9, of all the activities that COVID-19 brought online, video doctors' visits may be the one that caused the most personal trepidation. But with many people changing their minds, we expect that video doctors' visits will become the new normal for the long term. Most of these shifts were already in the process of happening, but have been pulled forward by years or even decades because of the pandemic catalyst. When the catalyst is removed, will our post-pandemic world see change decelerate? Only time will tell. But our trajectory has been permanently altered. Get the full reports to learn more. Visit Deloitte.com/predictions to see what Deloitte predicts.
Right. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Welcome to Deloitte Global's TMT predictions for 2021. We are in the midst of dramatic shifts. Even though the SARS coronavirus 2 is only 100 nanometers across, it has catalyzed big changes that will continue to affect the way we work and live. The story of 2021 will be driven by finding the right balance between humans and technology, society, and the economy. These are Deloitte's 9 predictions for 2021. Number 1, edge computing and intelligence bring the potential for faster, less expensive, and more secure operations in everything from autonomous vehicles to virtual reality to the Internet of Things. The world appears to be on track to a 4th industrial revolution. Number 2, cloud migration. Moving to the cloud is not only helping organizations deal with the pandemic, it is also positioning them to thrive beyond it. The growth of cloud services is likely to continue in 2021 and beyond. Number 3, in times of uncertainty, conspiracy theories abound. Concerns about 5G's health risks are widespread, but we expect that the use of 5G will continue to prove safe. Education needs to be consistent, and it needs to begin now. Number 4, meet the next generation radio access network, also known as Open RAN. We predict that more than 80% of core wireless network deployments will be virtualized by 2023, and Open RAN has the potential to revolutionize the telecom industry. Number 5, the gender gap in sports revenue is beginning to close. It will take time, but the industry must continue to invest in opportunities for women's sports in order to capitalize on the revenue potential. Look for record-breaking attendance and viewership as the upward trend continues. Number 6, the hyper-quantified athlete. Data is fundamentally changing sports. Look for this explosion of athlete data to raise new questions about how best to use it and how to do so ethically. Number 7, sales of 8K TVs are likely to reach US $3.3 billion in 2021. It's not just about entertainment. 8K TVs will also be used for gaming, work, and commercial purposes. Number 8, COVID-19 protocols have given digital reality headsets an opportunity to prove their usefulness in the enterprise and in education. We're projecting that unit sales of virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality headsets will double over 2019 levels. Number 9, of all the activities that COVID-19 brought online, video doctor's visits may be the one that caused the most personal trepidation. But with many people changing their minds, we expect that video doctor's visits will become the new normal for the long term. Most of these shifts were already in the process of happening, but have been pulled forward by years or even decades because of the pandemic catalyst. When the catalyst is removed, will our post-pandemic world see change decelerate? Only time will tell. But our trajectory has been permanently altered. Get the full reports to learn more. Visit Deloitte.com/predictions to see what Deloitte predicts.
Hello, sir. Kindly let me know if you are done compiling the questions so that we can go offline. Ronnie, if you could kindly halt the live stream. Ronnie, if you could kindly halt the live stream.